Very much. Welcome back, everyone. We shall now proceed to outcome 2 questions. Senator McDonald.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to ask some questions about biosecurity and specifically for the banana industry. Do you have all the right people here?
My colleague, so Christy Sorzak, Acting Deputy Secretary, Biosecurity Operations and Compliance Group. But happy to start, Senator.
Thank you. Just alerting all those people interested in bananas. We're starting now. Is it correct that the technical visit to the Philippines, based on their recent request for alternative biosecurity measures, has been postponed to the 23rd to the 27th of March?
Yes, Senator, that is correct. And that's on the request of the Philippines because the visit, which was due to happen in November, has been postponed because of the state of emergency due to the weather in the Philippines.
OK, so what was the original date?
So it was in the end of November.
Oh, thank you. And delayed because of the weather events?
Yes.
If the technical visit to the Philippines is conducted over a week or less, how many plantations will be visited?
I might hand to my colleague.
Thanks, Senator. Dr Peter Finnan, First Assistant Secretary, Biosecurity Plant and Science Services Division. So we're still negotiating with BPI, that's the Philippines Plant Department, on exactly what the itinerary is going to look like. We've got some particular requests that we've made of them about the sort of enterprises that we want to see, so we can be assured that we're going to see the full range of enterprises that we need to understand in making that initial evaluation of what are the Philippines' commercial production practices, which essentially will set the baseline for the further assessment that we'll need to do. So as I think we've discussed previously, Senator, they were asking us to consider as a first as a starting point their existing commercial production practices. So we need to go and see the full suite of the different kinds of practices in the Philippines.
Yes, of course. Is it proposed that it is only the plantations that you visit that will be producing bananas to come to Australia?
No, this is, in the first instance, a bit of a study tour, if you like, to understand the various sorts of practices. We'll use that then to understand what measures may need to be in place if we get to that point. And then, under our usual practices, we would anticipate there would be a system such as registering plantations that would be eligible for export, and we'll need to evaluate at that point in time what additional assurance may be needed from ourselves through our partners in the Philippines government as far as what that might look like to get a plantation on an approved list. So it's very early in the process. I don't want to sort of talk about things that are all a bit theoretical, but it's not that it's just the plantations that we might visit this time. And I wouldn't want to say that this is the only visit we'll make to the Philippines either.
Understand, thank you. OK, so you don't yet have an itinerary for this new technical visit. You're still negotiating that?
As Ms Shorzak indicated, we got pretty close, but we were still negotiating the final itinerary back in November. So that's the starting point for the conversation that we're having with our colleagues in the Philippines right now. But it didn't quite meet our needs, what was originally proposed, so we're working on ensuring that it will meet our needs.
Terrific, thank you. The issues paper was to be released in early 2026. Has it been released?
No, Senator. So the issues paper will be released once we have done the initial technical visit. Part of preparing the issues paper that we want to make sure is that we understand those production practices so that we can put in the issues papers any of those issues that may come up through the visit. So from our perspective, it's really important that the visit occur first. That will then make sure that the issues paper that we do release canvasses all the relevant issues so that we can get the appropriate feedback from our domestic industries and relevant experts as we then move into the assessment process.
OK, so It will be post the visit, which is 23 to 27 March.
That's right.
But would it be reasonable to think it'll be in the next 2 or 3 weeks after that, sometime in April?
I wouldn't like to say 2 or 3 weeks, but certainly as soon as practical after that. And certainly we are doing whatever we can do right now to draft that paper, noting that there will be specifics that will have to wait till the visit occurs.
The preliminary report was due at the end of 2026. Is that still on schedule?
At this stage, we are still working to that as a time frame. I'm very conscious that one of the issues that I heard very clearly from our domestic stakeholders when I went and visited Queensland and New South Wales and Western Australia was that the uncertainty of this process is a worry.
Yeah.
So we're very cognizant that we want to move through this process as quickly as we can, noting we will need to take the appropriate amount of time to ensure the evaluation is thorough, but at the same time to make sure it's done as quickly as we can to give that certainty to everyone involved.
I really appreciate that you visited and you really do understand what the issues are for growers, so thank you for that. Are there existing cost-sharing arrangements under Plant Health Australia's Plant Plan where the costs of eradication are shared between government and industry?
Certainly there is the emergency plant pest deed that would cover those sorts of issues, yes, Senator.
Okay. Do banana growers pay an extra levy to reimburse government for a share of these eradication efforts?
I might need to with it. Susie, if you're...
Yes, so the emergency...
Sorry, just your name.
Sorry. Dr. Susie Collins, Acting Chief Plant Protection Officer.
Thank you.
So the emergency response deed arrangements provide for cost sharing across affected industry parties and relevant governments. So it depends on the pest as to the different apportionments across the different parties to that.
It depends on the pest.
Yes, so there's a categorisation process under the emergency plant pest response arrangements, which looks at industry value and the like, and also sort of the public benefit of it, and depending on the particular pest and the commodity will depend on what sort of cost sharing apportionment is allocated.
Right. So when industry eradicated, was it freckle or sagatote?
Banana freckle.
Banana freckle in
The Northern Territory?
yeah. What was that apportionment as an example?
I'll just have a quick look at what the apportionment was. But while I'm doing that, the response to the current response to banana freckles in its transition to management phase. Mm-hmm. So that I was just looking at banana freckle. So it's what we call a Category 3 pest under the Emergency Plant Pest Response Deed, which is 50% government funded and 50% industry funded.
If there was an incursion of pathogens or pests from banana imports from the Philippines, would banana growers be required to pay for the eradication, or would the government pay for the eradication effort in full?
So incursions, post-border incursions of pests and diseases are covered by the provisions under the Emergency Plant Pest Response Deed. So incursions of new banana pests and diseases would be covered under those provisions and cost shared depending on what pest it was that we detected in accordance with the deed provisions.
That would be a difficult conversation, wouldn't it, if growers have been saying, please don't let in bananas from the Philippines because it's too great a risk. And then we did get something and they had to pay, say, 50% of the eradication costs. I don't expect you to comment on that. I'm just making the statement that would be a difficult conversation.
I guess, Senator, just to clarify one component, the cost that would be cost shared for a response would be 50% of all industry parties, so it wouldn't just be for banana affected parties.
Yep.
But appreciate the point.
Oh, so if it was banana freckle, for example,
Yep.
then...
So it would depend on which affected parties were signatory to the deed and relevant for the eradication response, so there might be some others.
Yes, that's right. So some pests obviously affect or can infest a number of different commodities. So the industry proportion of the cost sharing under the deed is split across all the affected industries.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Are you getting representations from other industries that could be affected if a banana disease came in that would spread onto their crops?
So certainly we haven't had any specific representations at this point in time, but certainly when we work through any consultation process, we seek to identify anyone who may have a relevant interest, and we seek their input. Whether they provide us any is up to them.
I'm sure you now will get some representation. We talked at previous estimates about the Biosecurity Scientific Advisory Group that was going to be re-established. How's that going?
So, Senator, I can update that the recruitment process for the Scientific Advisory Group has been completed, and a selection report will be provided to the Secretary for a decision, and then a formal appointment process subject to those that are recommended accepting. And so we propose that that process would be settled by the end of this month. And at the same time, as we have also previously mentioned, it's not just about the appointment of the SAG, but also to provide some guidance and clarification to stakeholders about when the SAG is used, why the SAG is used and how the SAG is used. And also in the context of a BIRA, so a biosecurity import risk analysis, and also the other non-regulated risk analysis that we do. So by the end of this month, that should be finalised as well.
When would you expect to stand? As far as a work plan for the new group, would they spring straight into action on assessing the banana program, or I know we had talked about whether or not they should have been stood up for the US beef import protocols. So what would you expect their work program would look like?
So just to clarify that, and this will be also helpful when the communication goes out with the appointment of the SAG. The SAG will only be able to be used when a BIRA is decided to happen effectively, which is a decision by the Director of Biosecurity. Right. And a decision around a BIRA for bananas has not happened at this point. Right. However, given the level of interest, and also we need to have the visit happen for the Philippines to get the information around whether a BIRA is warranted in this case. And then effectively, if a BIRA is in place, then the SAG will be appointed. But notwithstanding that, we will also, through any of our risk import analysis, be able to leverage members of the SAG for specific scientific advice independently as needed. And we are very cognisant of the interest, particularly in the banana assessment, and have already been looking to engage banana experts, if you like, to help provide advice, regardless of which pathway is kind of worked through for the review. And in addition to that, as we have also previously noted, for the visit to Philippines, we also do have an industry expert and a tropical plant pathologist as well going.
Terrific. Has the industry been advised or consulted on which experts are going to the Philippines?
Yes, indeed, Senator. We had some conversations at previous estimates as well, and so we had received some input through the Australian Banana Growers Council in particular about a particular expertise that they thought should be on the visit. Certainly we thought their suggestions was a useful one, and they had some suggestions about who might be a useful person to take, and we've taken up that particular suggestion. And so that is still in place, so that individual will be travelling with the team that departs in March. Oh,
that's really great news. May I ask how many people will be on the SAG?
So similar to sort of last time at this point, we'll be looking for a chair, an economist and a risk analysis as a sort of starting point, which would be reflective of our sort of standard approach. But that absolutely does not confine in terms of having expertise used to be leveraged to help the SAG, depending on the specific risk analysis that's or BIRA that we're looking at.
And perhaps if I can add to that, Senator, the SAG is defined in the Biosecurity Act and the Biosecurity Regulations, and as Ms Shawzak has indicated, it needs a chair, an economist and a risk assessor, but there's also a provision in there for the SAG to seek further expertise from experts in a particular field. So, for example, in the situation of involvement in a banana review, it's potentially unlikely that the SAG members themselves will have all the expertise needed to evaluate. And so one of the things that they can do is to commission additional independent experts to provide them with assistance. And so we will be working through that process as well to make sure that relevant experts have been identified so that if there is and when there is a need, that they're available.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Is the import risk analysis being conducted as a regulated or non-regulated IRA?
So as we've indicated previously, we have not yet made a formal decision on that particular question. We want to do the visit to the Philippines as a first base to make sure we have all of the baseline information. At some point, I will be asked to make a recommendation to the Secretary in her capacity as the Director of Biosecurity. I would imagine, or I foresee, that I'm highly likely to make a recommendation to the Director of Biosecurity that we use the regulated process. But as I say, that's not a formal decision point that we've gotten to at this point. It will be one that we come to relatively soon afterwards as we work through the issues paper process once the visit has been completed.
And the Secretary will be making the decision as the
Director of Biosecurity.
Director of Biosecurity. Excellent. Okay. The Inspector General of Biosecurity has noted that the scientific advisory group in the Department's import risk analysis process is unclear, ad hoc, and therefore one of the recommendations of the report is that the SAG role should be reviewed. Has a review of the SAG occurred?
So yes, Senator, and just just a moment ago I was talking about the advice that will go to stakeholders and clarification when the SAG is appointed around when and how and why the SAG is used and in what circumstances. And then also alternatively, where we're not doing a regulated bureau, what other opportunities there are to leverage that independent scientific advice, whether it's a member of the SAG because they can be contracted independently, or, as my colleague mentioned, other expertise that we might need.
Terrific. So the outcomes of the review, perhaps on notice you could just provide that as a document. Would that be simpler rather than, were there many outcomes?
Yeah, so that will be a part of the communication package that will get released at the end of February.
Okay, and that will have the outcomes of the review.
And that clarification.
What are the new terms of reference?
So they're not published at the moment, but they will be part of the package that will be released at the end of February to provide that clarification around the SAG, its role and its purpose.
Okay. I was about to ask you what is the process of appointing members of the SAG in the import risk analysis and biosecurity risk analysis. Is that the same as what you've just discussed, the recruitment report, the recommendations, the decision? Okay. Have I missed anything?
No, Senator.
Okay. Terrific. That's the end of bananas. Thank you so much for being so fulsome in your responses and so specific. It's been very helpful. Thank you. I now want to move to prawns. Are you also prawns? Yes. Excellent.
A different colleague.
Dr. Smith, your title is First Assistant Secretary, Biosecurity Animal Division. And of course, I don't think of prawns as animals, so there you go. That's very good. Under the department's guidelines to enable the importation of raw prawns into Australia, will there be any testing for white spot disease?
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, Dr. Brant Smith, First Assistant Secretary for the Biosecurity Animal Division. Yes, part of the requirements, the import conditions allow for testing for white spot, and that's undertaken in our current import conditions.
Have requests come from India, Thailand and Vietnam for equivalence testing?
So, yes, so under our obligations as part of our WTO obligations, we're required to look at equivalence measures for testing. So as part of that, we recently provided some pre-export testing equivalent guidelines. So essentially that's a very early stage of the process to say, should those measures be put forward? These are the sorts of things that we would be looking for, but noting that they then would have to formally request us to assess those processes. We would then have to assess those processes, then we'd have to make sure that they meet our appropriate level of protection, and only at that point, which would take some time, would we then consider those to be met. So there's no immediate move towards that, rather we are in the early stages of assessing those requests.
Okay. Will this reduce the efficacy of Australia's 100% on arrival testing?
So what we would be looking at is, do we think that the measures that they would put in place would meet our appropriate level of protection to an equivalent level as what we would undertake at the border testing. So we would have to be sure that the arrangements, the competent authority could undertake that testing to the standard that we require in order to make that decision. But we're certainly not at that point, and we'd have to make sure we are very satisfied that that could be met.
Does white spot disease exist in prawns from India, Thailand and Vietnam?
So white spot is present in many of our imported countries, but we have requirements around sourcing from populations that are free from white spot and a range of measures such as the removal of risk material, certification requirements, etc., such that we would manage the risk of white spot to our appropriate level of protection.
So what biosecurity protocols exist in Australia to test for white spot disease and any other diseases in imported prawns?
So as part of our import requirements, one of them is we tend to do batch testing, and so we will test consignments to see whether there's any presence of white spot. If there is, then obviously that doesn't meet our requirements. They either have to be re-exported or destroyed, such that they're not allowed to be released from biosecurity control.
So we'd be expecting those same kind of levels of testing offshore to match. That's the equivalency piece that you were speaking about earlier, that would be at least that standard of Australia's.
Yes.
What is the response of the Australian Prawn Farmers Association, the Australian Council of Prawn Fisheries, to these biosecurity protocols for importing raw prawns into Australia, given that the security of this industry has previously been compromised at great personal cost to the livelihoods of the small businesses and families?
So we meet and talk to the APFA regularly, and we provided them a copy and notified them of the request that those countries you mentioned about that pre-export testing equivalence measures. They obviously have had a longer-standing view, a different view around the levels of biosecurity controls, but we are confident that the measures we have in place manage the risks, but we in good faith still negotiate and talk to our domestic industry, but also we have to make sure we manage our risks to our ALOP and to manage our international obligations.
So the previous white spot outbreak occurred because of non-compliance by importers and weak regulations and procedures. What protections are in place to ensure that this will not occur again to the Australian prawn industry?
So part of the requirements are that the imported prawns are for human consumption. So one of the issues that has previously been raised is around that end use, such that we talk to our state and territory colleagues as well, particularly because they manage a lot of the labelling and end use issues. So we still have strong import conditions and requirements for the import of prawn products, and they are for the purposes of human consumption. So that's what we can manage as part of our requirements under our conditions.
If there's a breach of guidelines and white spot disease is detected in a shipment, what will be the consequences for the importer?
So, Senator, it would depend on the nature of that. So if it's just been detected as part of our standard testing procedures, we would go back to the country of origin and we would notify them of the situation, ask questions about what may or may not have occurred. We'd check all the certification, we'd make sure all the requirements have been met, and then we'd have to make a decision with the importer as to what they want to do with the product, noting we said we have options for re-exportation or destroy, but what we wouldn't do is then release that material from biosecurity control to risk a further outbreak.
So I was of the understanding that what you're proposing is to test offshore, but are you still proposing to test onshore as well?
So what we have at the moment is batch testing for onshore. What this is, what we're trying to do here is determine, is there an equivalent means by which some countries could meet some of those requirements for testing offshore? But there's a lot of assessment and process that would have to go into that to make sure that's the case. It's not a quick process, and it may not even eventuate to be meeting our requirements. So, but we are obliged to look at equivalence measures. We do that across a range of commodities, but we would have to be satisfied that it meets our requirements, and if it doesn't, we won't put it in place.
Are we required under the WTO arrangements, or when you say we are required to consider it, by whom? So
as part of our requirements on our SPS agreement, so our sanitary and phytosanitary agreements as part of our WTO membership, one of the requirements is that we must assess the biosecurity risks of equivalent measures as we ask other countries to do on our behalf. But we would still need to make sure we've done the assessment to make sure the biosecurity risks are managed. And if they're not, we're not obliged to then use those because they don't meet our requirements.
Okay, that's good to hear. If there is an outbreak of white spot in Australia due to the rollback of Australian testing, who will be responsible for containing and eradicating the disease? And what compensation will be available for prawn farmers and trawlers?
So I guess it would depend, this is hypothetical, it would depend on the location and nature of the outbreak and the jurisdiction. On the animal side, there's an emergency animal disease response agreement, which is a cost shared agreement. That's not in place for the aquatic space. They don't have an aquatic equivalent. That's been on the cards for some time, but hasn't been signed up to by relevant industries. So it would depend on the nature of the outbreak, I guess.
So is that similar? Would it be similar to the banana industry scale of depending on what the disease was? Would it be a similar sort of?
Yeah. So,
if you did sign up to it?
No, Senator. I mean, under the banana, there is banana industry, and there is a existing cost-sharing deed arrangement for emergency plant pest response. But as Dr. Smith just mentioned, there is nothing equivalent at the moment for a national cost-shared response arrangement for aquatic. So it would be a different situation. So any cost-sharing proportions haven't been agreed effectively.
Sorry, I understood that, but what I was getting at, would you expect that it would be a similar schedule of types of disease, impacts on other industries? I'm not trying to commit you to an agreement here. I'm just trying to understand, would it be a...
Yeah, so theoretically that's right. So on the animal side, like the plant side, we have categorisations under our equivalents. So if that was the case for an aquatic arrangement, it would likely have a similar form as far as categorising the diseases and pests and how that would be cost shared.
Okay. Was there a scientific risks assessment that was undertaken to support the rollback of restrictions on prawn imports?
Just so I'm clear on that question, Senator, is that in relation to the pre-export guidelines I just talked about, or the previous prawn review that was done that allowed imports in the first place?
No, on the current examination of equivalency testing, because my questions are based on that this has been implemented or this is an in process, whereas you're telling me that this is still under consideration, you're testing whether or not the equivalency will be up to standard.
Yes, so that's absolutely right. So we haven't committed to this other than here are some guidance material around what you could do.
Yep.
There's a whole series of steps around assessment that need to be undertaken, which we haven't got to yet. And as such, we haven't got to the stage of looking at independent assessment of that.
Right. So there is a scientific risk assessment happening now to assess the equivalency options, arrangements.
So what we've done is we've looked at the request, we've provided some guidance around the sorts of things they would need to do in order for us to assess it. So it's even before looking at the review of that. If and when they came to us and said, yes, we'd like you to formally look at it, we would then have to do an assessment of that, which would be a risk assessment, and that would probably take some time.
Okay. This is very good news, because when I've seen prawn trawlers and fishermen in North Queensland, they were of the understanding that this decision had been made already to accept offshore testing. So I'm very pleased to hear that that is not the case and that you are going through a proper assessment. Will the scientific advisory group potentially also be brought in to assess any decision on this?
Senator, it's probably a bit too early to say. It would depend on whether it... So it's not a import risk analysis per se for a commodity coming in. It would be an element of what we've already looked at, noting that the original testing requirements we had independent review of some time ago, but it would be a bit too early to say. If we thought we needed to, we would do so.
Okay. So I assume that you're consulting with Australian prawn producers and industry members as you're doing this. So that would probably be a good discussion point with them to discuss what those options are for scientific review.
Agree.
How many importers are currently approved to import raw prawns into Australia?
Unfortunately, Senator, I don't have that on the top of my head, but I could take that on notice and come back to you.
Thank you. And what is the estimated cost of further outbreaks if a breach occurs?
Again, that's difficult to quantify, Senator, at this point. It would depend on the size and scale of the outbreak, where it occurred, and matters of that nature. So I don't have that information at hand, but I can take it on notice to see if there's any estimation or models that have been done in the past, but I'm not aware.
Okay. So, my final question on this is that the previous white spot outbreak at, was it the Redlands in northern New South Wales?
Yeah, so it's Clarence River.
Clarence River,
yep.
And so I understand that there's been some talk of reducing the size of that area. Am I correct in understanding that there's been talk of reducing the size of the area that's quarantined?
Yes, so New South Wales, obviously the jurisdiction managing that, the zones around that. So we have talked to them through our normal engagement, through our committee structures, around whether they might amalgamate some of those zones for ease of management.
Yep.
And that's something that they're working through to work out how best to contain the white spot virus within that area, but also try and make it more manageable and looking at the impacts to industry.
Okay, because at the moment they're restricted in where they can sell the prawns, aren't they?
Yes, insofar as New South Wales are looking at what options the prawns from those areas or management of those prawns. So I know they're looking at some different options for that. Yep.
Okay.
And
all right.
Senator, just to clarify, that combination into a single zone happened in December.
Yes.
December last year.
So they had two zones and they have amalgamated into a single zone,
Right.
and New South Wales made that decision, as is their right, December last year.
Yep.
Okay. Has it reduced the geographic size, or is it just an amalgamation of two
I'd have to
existing?
check. I'm not entirely sure.
Would
but-
you check that for
Sure.
me, please? That would be very helpful. Do you want to
You know, I've had visions of Senator Bill Heffernan walking here with a bag of prawns, don't you?
actually would well have happened?
Every time you talk about
It was
prawns.
a different Saturday in the 1970s. For dinner.
Yep, not of the long prawns.
They won't, you know.
I'm happy. Does Senator Pocock have questions?
He does.
Well,
Not about
rotate
prawns.
the call, and I've got a few more for our consent.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go from prawns to rabbits, if that's all right.
There are a lot of rabbits around here.
There certainly are. At last estimates, I asked a number of agencies about rabbit biocontrol, and in response, CSIRO indicated that it would take $3 million and 10 years to develop the next rabbit biocontrol virus, and that they were in the early stages, and so we're definitely looking at a 10-year time horizon. Given that we all knew that with the release of viruses, you get a natural sort of immunity over time, and that rabbits would become a big problem and would see sort of rabbit numbers explode. I'm just interested how the department, given you are responsible for this, how you've dropped the ball on this, and we're in a situation with no virus and a 10-year horizon until the next one. What's happened?
Yeah, so thank you, Senator. I think it's fair to say that there has been ongoing national work around rabbit biocontrol, and it has been happening not really for the past 10 years. And in fact, the Commonwealth's role and this department role is really to help with the national coordination and certainly supporting some of the research and development. And then also awareness, and I think, Senator, in the relevant committee for environment yesterday, a couple of examples around some of the exact investments that the Commonwealth has contributed to CSIRO to really have some co-investments around rabbit control, and also looking at not just the rabbit control itself, and obviously working with states and territories and other jurisdictions, the suppression and other sorts of controls versus a biological control agent. And there has been previous research, which was in fact done in 2025, which looked at some of the global work around biocontrols, and there hasn't been another kind of identified biocontrol that could be introduced. And Senators, you're probably aware that through the CSIRO and also the Centre for Invasive Species Solution, there is a rabbit biocontrol strategy with a number of steps that the strategy rolls out, including the sort of research that's needed, looking at the efficacy of the existing controls, and definitely not starting from scratch, but building on some of the solutions that are out there. And the Commonwealth and this department, in fact, chairs an Environmental and Invasive Species Committee. Sorry, I should say Environment and Invasive Species Committee, which met today to look at the next phase of the CSIRO research and looking at national cost-sharing options around what that next phase looks like. And I'm happy to defer to my colleague in terms of what that specifically next stage might look like. But it is an ongoing piece of research. It's not starting from scratch, and certainly we have been leading from a Commonwealth perspective, but with our states and territory jurisdictions, and also CSIRO and the CIS in particular.
It seems to contradict what I'm hearing from other agencies. If you talk to DQ and CSIRO, there was $1 million provided, I think 18 months ago, for CSIRO to essentially restart looking for a virus. You're saying this has been ongoing work for the last decade.
Yeah, it has been, Senator. And
well, how come there's no virus then?
So there's been, and also the 2025 MLA research identified that there's no new global sort of option because we're not from an Australian context, not wanting to start from scratch. And in fact, the investment that we just referred to, the $500,000 to CSIRO for this year to look at the next phase of biocontrol looks at the long-term capacity, but the $515,000 also a separate amount that has been provided to look at the efficacy of existing amounts.
But I guess this is my frustration, is that we're giving CSIRO $500,000 now, but you're the coordinating agency. What happened 10 years ago? Like, why haven't we seen this this urgency to
Yeah.
actually...
So I think, as you would appreciate, that the biocontrols have a life cycle of around 10 to 15 years. And so it has been building on the ongoing research. We have a role, but we are not the only party that has responsibilities to contribute to this research as states and territories, which has been an ongoing kind of research and project to continue to look at refining the controls. And as I mentioned, Senator, it's not drop the ball. There is actually, as I mentioned today, a cost-sharing option around the next phase that will be building on the work that CSIRO has, not just for the last investment, but through under the strategy that all of the parties have continued to work on. But,
So just before we move on, is CSIRO wrong in saying that it'll take $3 million in 10 years?
So I might refer to my colleague. For if you were starting from scratch to look at a 10-year horizon, it could for a brand new biocontrol, but we are building on existing evidence and existing research to look at the most effective option, which may not take a full 10 years, but because we're not necessarily starting from scratch.
Sure. So how long will it take?
If I can just add to that, Bertie Henneke, Chief Environmental Biosecurity Officer in the department. The research on biological control, as we know, Senator, is that every few years the virulence of the virus is waning off and is reducing. Yeah. And that's why, as you rightly say, we have to continuously looking for new strains that keep up the virulence so it keeps the fight on biocontrol. That is generally recognised, and we have particularly currently, as you would know, the calicivirus. There are particularly 2 strains that have been over the last decade introduced that have been waned off. And there has been also, as Ms. Susuk is saying, there have been research overseas to look for new strains to bring in. That research has not brought up any new strains that can be brought in. So CSIRO, in this case, is now looking at the strains that we have in Australia and trying to look to do some research to make them more viral, and that's where the research is focusing at the moment. But there's also a recognition, Senator, that there's part of biocontrol that is really important, but it's also other tools in the toolbox that we need to maintain the pressure on the rabbit.
I'll go to some of them. But I guess my question remains, why is CSIRO now picking this research up now? The department knows that you have this sort of this increasing immunity, declining efficacy of the virus, and so why are we now caught with our pants down saying, oh, we've got a rabbit problem, and we need to put money into CSIRO? Like, I understand there's international research efforts, but as a country, why haven't we been continuing to research this area?
The main reason for that, Senator, is that the exploration overseas for additional virulent strain has not been fruitful or successful.
But why haven't we been doing that here for the last decade?
I don't understand what you mean.
Why haven't we been doing that research? We have a world-class research centre with disease-free rabbits at the CSIRO. Yeah. Why haven't they been funded to do that at the same time as international?
The research is happening here, and the funding for CSIRO to explore viruses overseas, CSIRO is conducting that. So CSIRO is involved. CSIRO has the capability and the capacity to do that work.
But why haven't they been... Sorry, I feel like we're talking... Why haven't they been funded to do that? They said to me on notice, give us $3 million, and we're pretty sure in 10 years' time we'll have you a virus, but they haven't been given that money. So I'm just interested, why haven't we done that as a country?
So I think, Senator, it's fair to say that this wouldn't be, it's not a matter for this department to provide the funding.
Everyone points to DAF when I say rabbits.
Yeah, and to be fair, while it is absolutely our role from a significant invasive species to help with national leadership and coordination, it is a broader Commonwealth government effort, but particularly with states and territories and also other jurisdictions such as the CISC, and we have provided funding to support that. Not just, so I should probably clarify that the couple of projects which were referred in yesterday's committee, but also from CSIRO, are the most recent. There are other investments within the last kind of few financial years. And this department has also provided other support for invasive species such as feral foxes, cats, deers, and other biocontrols more broadly that could be leveraged for rabbits. So it's not just this is the only investment at this point,
No, I understand
and
that,
also not for us to sort of comment on.
It just seems to me like as a country we've led the world on rabbit biocontrol, and then we've just totally dropped the ball. And I understand there's other methods, but if you actually go to some of the other methods, so asking, say, the National Capital Authority about the rabbit problem, it's a big problem in Canberra, as you'd know. Since July 2023, they've spent $320,000 on rabbit control to remove 3,000 rabbits. $120 a rabbit, $120 per rabbit. You look at the ACT government, and I'm pretty sure listening to some of their committees, I think they've spent in the order of around $700,000 in the last year or two. That's $1 million right there. The entirety of what I'm hearing, the Commonwealth's investment is sort of $500,000. So
it certainly wouldn't be, Senator. And
in rabbit biocontrol.
So we also have, again, that they're just the most recent, certainly within the last sort of 12 months. But there are other programs, such as the Community Pest and Weeds Management Program, where we have
but
actually...
is that biocontrol?
It is, and we have jointly co-sponsored projects with states and territories. There's one with Victoria in the previous financial year. Mm-hmm. So this is an example of current investment for this financial year.
Sorry, but is that to develop the next virus?
So it's to support research with a specific state that will help on biocontrol for rabbits.
Well, I'd love maybe on notice, I know this is like it's probably a little bit of an exercise, and I'm sorry whoever's having to do this work, but maybe over the last 10 years, if you could outline all the money that's gone to rabbit biocontrol, because I don't know, I'm just concerned this is our sort of one of our biggest environmental pests, and we're
but
we're
also
just not doing
appreciate
enough.
that other jurisdictions and nationally and other parties, including researchers, have contributed to research, but specifically also to deliver under the strategy that I referenced that was nationally agreed is the way forward. So it's not just Commonwealth investment alone, but we can certainly take on notice of more detail in terms of what over the last 10 years investment has been provided.
What's gone directly to developing rabbit biocontrol. How much do rabbits cost Australian agriculture each year?
We have a list of all the...
So European rabbits are estimated to cost Australia's agriculture sector up to $197 million per year in control costs and residual agriculture losses. That's an ABARES 2023.
Thank you. Well, maybe this is a political question. Minister, we've got rabbits costing Aussie farmers just shy of $200 million every single year, and CSIRO is saying for $3 million you can have the next virus. That seems like a pretty good investment. Is the government going to step up there?
Well, I'm happy to take it on notice and give you a bit more detail about what we've been doing. Obviously, the department will talk through some of the work that's been undertaken, and I suppose the starting point is around it being an established invasive species and who's responsible for who has to take responsibility for that, in that it's the state and territory governments that have the lead on that. But obviously there's a role for the federal government to play. The department have talked through what they've done. That obviously does cross over into some other portfolio areas as well, which you're obviously well aware of. But if there's further detail I can provide, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you. That would be great. The other thing I wanted to touch on with rabbit biocontrol, and I think this goes to some of the questions I've asked on carp in the past. Talking to CSIRO, the longest part of this process is obviously the regulatory process, APVMA, etc., etc. Given the history of rabbit biocontrol in Australia, what would be the process to reduce a 7-year regulatory time frame down to less, a couple of years. Is there a way that could be sped up? And if so, who would lead that work and how would it work?
In terms of regulatory frameworks, the regulatory aspect is managed by different organisations. So DQ under the EBPC Act, for us, for the department under the Biosecurity Act or Biological Control Act, and they all work in independence and go through their processes as they need to do that. So there's probably not necessarily a great need, or not need is the wrong word, but a great opportunity to reduce that time, because it is based on data, it is based on the research, particularly with biological control. If we look at general biocontrol development, it takes 5 to 10 years. And that's, we see that with the carp virus too, that the research needs to be clear on answering all the questions that the regulatory agencies need to make sure that the approval is managing or mitigating all the risks that may occur. So that's really taking most of the time, Senator.
But Senator, can I just clarify? A bit like CARP, there would be opportunities to align research with regulatory approval processes, and something to go back to the conversation on CARP. We've also established an implementation group, so that while you've got the research, the priority areas being finalised, as well as looking at the regulatory processes and implementation, kind of group thinking nationally what sort of things you would need if all the decision points aligned and ministers were to agree to release, that you would be ready to go, like from an implementation perspective. So there are opportunities to look at those alignments. It still wouldn't fundamentally truncate to a year or 2 years. And just one other clarification, that $3 million figure that you referenced from the question on notice is for further research. It wouldn't necessarily be the total cost to develop and implement the biocontrol.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, that's good to know. And I'll take it up to Sarah as well. Does the department have a goal for when you want the next biocontrol ready?
Biocontrol or general management of national weeds and pest animals is a shared responsibility, like Ms. Seesok was saying before. We're working together through the Environment and Invasives Committee under the National Biosecurity Committee that has all states and territories represented to work way forwards. There are agreed strategies like the Rapid Biocontrol strategy that looks at these opportunities, what are the next priorities where investment needs to be done.
Sure.
And the investment is looking at co-investment, which is including the Commonwealth as well as the states and territories as well as industry.
So there's no goal.
So the strategy itself has specific phases, and in fact, given the need to look at which is part of the program for the next phase of the biocontrol, really looks at from the next 3 years in particular as a key area of escalation and focus, which was, as I've referred to previously, what was discussed at the national governance today.
Okay, I'll check. Is that publicly available?
So no, there'll be minutes from the committee
document.
Effectively, but there's not detail. Obviously, it's a national cost shared proposal that's being considered by the EIC today, so it won't be public, but the minutes in terms of the context and a little bit further detail on timing can certainly be provided.
Why aren't we setting goals for something like this? It seems to me huge, $200 million a year. We should be saying, by 2035 we want the next rapid biocontrol good to go. What's stopping that sort of, I wouldn't even call ambition, just sort of planning?
Yeah, well, I think, a lot of the strategies from a weeds and invasive species perspective, whether it's pests, they do have a time frame, and there are stages and research along the way to get to. Yeah. I'm not sure what the biocontrol strategy time frame pipeline. 10 years. From when? So it was agreed in 2024.
2024. Yeah. And so by 2034 we'll have a rapid biocontrol. In
terms of implementing the strategy, depending on which option Australia goes down.
Well, see, this is the problem. Is we can implement strategies until the cows come home, but it seems like we need to have some goals, and we may not meet them. But I don't know. Just is that not a better way of trying to do things?
I think. Sorry, Senator. I'm very new to this this topic.
Me too. Well, not this topic, but this.
But I think I think what we're sort of struggling with is having ourselves an independent goal separate to the national group is sort of not really how we go about these things. They should be
why
shared.
doesn't the national group have a goal?
Well, I think it does have a goal to try to fight biocontrol, and I think you'll find more of that in the public domain soon about how that's going to proceed. But those goals do need to be informed by a sense of realism and what we can achieve. So I think we're in that process. But I think it is fair to say all the states and territories and at the national level we would have a goal to very much support a biocontrol being developed. It's just about how you mobilise that. But I understand your point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for your work on this. I think it's so important, and I would urge the government to give you more resources to better coordinate and invest in it. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Pocock. Now, what have we got? Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go to, I think there was a forum of some such held on these issues, a National Biosecurity Forum held on the 5th and 6th of November.
Yes.
You attended that forum?
Yes, I chaired that forum.
Okay, great. Well, I've got some slides I think that were given to us in response to a question on notice at last estimates here. There's a lot of discussion in the slides about how things are getting, outbreaks, if that's the right word, are getting more frequent, that the costs of cost sharing are growing as a result. It just all seems to be a little bit of a drumbeat towards the government moving away from a cost sharing approach. Is that being considered?
So no, Senator, and in fact a little bit the opposite. So noting that for others the biosecurity incursions have increased in complexity, cost and frequency, particularly over the last few financial years. So the intent to better manage not just that, but also broader strategic risks to the system. There is agreement, particularly through National Agriculture Ministers, to focus on priority areas for reform and look at cost-sharing arrangements in terms of how they're being implemented, because there is the real live issue for affordability for affected parties, which we're seeing through incursions. So it's not about to move away from cost sharing, it's actually about how can we better implement, where can we streamline and look at reform options.
But it's one of those affected parties, the government. Are you seeking to reduce the exposure of costs here to the government?
It's not about shifting how cost sharing arrangements work at all. It's probably a little bit about thinking, are there other kind of, do we need to look at some of the way that we govern ourselves around cost sharing? Could we look at easier and less costly ways of doing things in responses, for example? Are there other things that we can leverage from international partners around how we look at the deed arrangements, for example? It is absolutely not a cost-sharing exercise.
So
in terms of shifting cost sharing.
Okay. No. Yeah, because I think the basic principle is that if we don't have cost sharing, it'll reduce incentives for people to self-report, right?
Yeah,
that we can't.
Not at all.
Yep.
The shared responsibility and the cost-sharing agreements themselves, and in fact the second day of the National Biosecurity Forum involved all of the signatories to the deeds. We do have ongoing reviews of the deeds, but noting the pressures on everyone. Are there other things that we need to do? Can we look at earlier surveillance? But it's more around refining the cost-sharing governance arrangements, but not shifting the cost-sharing itself. It's integral to the national biosecurity system arrangements.
Right, okay. Right, so what about the deeds themselves? Is there a consideration been given to changing the deeds?
Yeah, so there was a broad conversation at the forum around how the deeds are operating, but also cognizant that at the moment there are 2 5-yearly deed reviews happening. So the deeds are generally reviewed for every 5 years. The Plant Health Australia are looking at the plant deed effectively going through their 5-yearly review, and the environmental biosecurity, the National Environmental Biosecurity deed is actually going through the 5-yearly review at the moment. And these consecutively have 5-yearly reviews and come up with some consistent themes that we might need to address as a nation through the cost-sharing deed. So maybe there's some clarification on when we move from sort of eradication to containment, or some clarification about transition to management principles. Again, looking kind of at affordability, but also looking at the governance and how the technical committees work with the national management groups, and broader considerations needed, not just around whether a deed or a pest is technically feasible to eradicate, but looking at the economic or the domestic trade implications. So some broader kind of economic analysis. So again, it goes to the refinement. Now, both of those reviews should have, we'll go to the National Biosecurity Committee for discussion by the middle of this year.
Sorry, you'll be looking at that mid this year?
Yes, the
right?
outcomes of those 2 deed reviews.
Okay, right. Okay. Who are the parties to the deed?
So we have the list of the signatories for both. So we've got the animal.
I don't need all of the actual names, but just is it industry, state governments?
So generally it's the Commonwealth, it's the state,
Yep.
all those state and territory jurisdictions, and affected parties.
Yeah, so the agricultural groups.
That's right.
So to change the deed, do all of those have to agree, so to speak?
So depending on which deed it is, they will go to the governance or the board arrangements, member arrangements, to consider the outcomes of those reviews.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. So we'll, I suppose, watch this space. Apparently there's a poll at the forum as well. Do you have the results of the poll?
So we would have, I don't have it with me, Senator, but we definitely do have...
Can you take that on notice?
Yep.
So
some of that might have been in the question.
So apparently there were 189 attendees and there was an audience poll?
Yeah,
the results from the audience
that was
poll?
used effectively a Mentimeter throughout the 2 days around opportunities for reform, or if there were... So an example is, with the existing system, where are the pressures that the parties might want to focus on first, such as data sharing, early surveillance, looking again at some policy frameworks to clarify containment versus eradication.
Okay, all right. So could you take that on notice on whether or not, or what the results were?
Some of that will be confidential in terms of the participants that provided their views at the forum.
I'm not seeking names. I'm interested in results.
No, but just some generalisation versus exact numbers.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. Can I just get an update on lumpy skin disease?
Sure. So I might start, Senator, as my colleagues come to the table. So is this obviously in the context of the
LSD outbreak in Bali?
In Bali?
Yep, that's right.
Yes. So my colleagues will be able to provide an update, but effectively the biosecurity risk stays the same for Australia. There has been a risk assessment and also broader ongoing engagement with the Indonesian authorities, but given our existing biosecurity measures in place, kind of pre and post in that border, the actual assessment has not changed, and that's based on the number of flights, the disinfection of the planes, and there's also some broader monitoring which we'll continue to do, but whether my colleagues wanted to add anything to that.
Thanks, Senator. So on the, I guess, the measures that we're putting in place, or we've looked at, as Mr. Solzak said, we did an assessment of the regulated pathways. So those are the pathways of passengers, of returning live export vessels, etc. We looked at the distribution of disease within the country. We looked at geographical locations of that, and re-looked at our measures that we have in place. And we deemed that, despite the fact that it has shifted into Bali in more recent times, the measures that we have in place for that still manage the risk of LSD coming into the country.
Right, okay, so there continues to be detections of LSD. Yeah, okay. It is LSD, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but we're talking
lumpy
about
skin disease, not the drug.
I'm sure there might be other forms of LSD in Bali too, but right, so lumpy skin disease, that continues to be detected in Bali?
Yes.
I was going to say, it has had the first detection, Senator, but it has been in Indonesia and, in fact, about 2 kilometres from Bali for some time.
Right, okay.
Thanks. Senator Beth Cookson, Australian Chief Veterinary Officer. That's correct. Since lumpy skin disease was first detected in Indonesia in 2022, it has become established on the island of Java. That is only 2 kilometres away from Bali.
Okay.
So whilst it's notable that it has moved into a new province within Indonesia, it's not entirely unexpected that we will continue to see changes in the distribution within Indonesia.
Okay. Do we continue to provide support to Indonesia?
We are, Senator.
What is that support?
We have a range of ongoing programs of work with Indonesia. Since the detection was reported on the 13th of January, our officials in Indonesia have met with the Government of Bali and also with the Indonesian Ministry of Agriculture to offer additional technical support. The types of technical support that we've provided to date include about $1.65 million to the CSIRO, Australian Centre for Disease Preparedness, to deliver diagnostic and capacity building support to Indonesian government laboratories. We've also supported several grants between Australian and Indonesian livestock industry partnerships to support on-the-ground activities related to the control, and have a project currently with the World Organisation for Animal Health, which is also supporting types of technical assistance that go to things like the development of response and control options, and that's of course on top of the initial 1.4 million doses of lumpy skin disease vaccines that were donated to Indonesia when the detections were first reported around 2022 and 2023.
Okay. Right. Has there been apparently one of the actions from the action plan in 2022 was to develop a national LSD surveillance strategy. Has that been developed?
Yes, Senator. That has recently been developed and endorsed by the Animal Health Committee.
When did that happen?
I would have to take on notice the exact timing of that. It was.
I've got information here that was presented or was going to be provided to the Animal Health Committee in late October.
That would be about correct. The initial.
They adopted it at that meeting, or was there?
I would have to take on notice whether we adopted it out of session, Senator, or in session.
But it wasn't before that meeting. It was either at or after.
No, that's right. It was around then.
It has been adopted now.
And the initial results of that surveillance strategy and assessment were also presented at the mid-term review of the Lumpy Skin Disease National Action Plan, which was about July. So there was earlier engagement on it.
Right. Okay. Well, how come it took 3 years to develop this surveillance strategy? The action plan was in late 22, was it? So it took 3 years?
That's correct, Senator. There was a range of considerations that went into the development of the surveillance strategy, as well as the prioritisation of the variety of objectives and activities under the Lumpy Skin Disease National Action Plan. Critically, some of the inputs that were required for the surveillance strategy did take some time to develop, and that included some modelling of lumpy skin disease outbreak types of scenarios. The conclusion of that analysis, which was a detailed epidemiological analysis of the surveillance of existing surveillance, was that was sufficient to provide a high confidence in the freedom from lumpy skin disease in the highest incursion risk areas across Northern Australia.
Okay, all right. Right, well, look, I've got some more questions on that. We might put them on notice. Actually, just quickly, relevant to this, obviously the Prime Minister did travel to Indonesia last week. Were these issues discussed?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Okay. Someone has sent through that apparently the Indonesian government has adopted a free nutritious meals program that's helped drive demand for Australian beef, but price instability and currency fluctuations are impacting Australian exports. What work's being done with the Indonesian government to help stabilise that situation?
I think Senator, I'm not sure if Mr. Ms. Hutchison might. This is more of an outcome one kind of question in terms of what support. But did you?
All right. Okay. Well, you can provide what information you can, if that's okay.
Yep.
Do you have anything more for outcome 2? Oh, okay. Anything for outcome 2? Okay.
So as you mentioned, Senator, the Australian government supports Indonesia in its goal of self-sufficiency in food security. So the Indonesian government has had a focus on a nutritious meals program. It's mostly a domestically focused measure, but Indonesia is an important trading partner for Australia, a significant and important trading partner, so we continue to work closely with Indonesia through a range of cooperation programs, including on agriculture, and so there's a number that I could go through or provide them on notice.
Maybe on notice, I think. We'll keep going. Thank you very much. Chair, I think Senator McDonald and Senator Colbeck have a few quick ones, and then we're done with outcome 2.
Okay, Senator McDonald.
Thank you. Could I just turn to imported cut flowers and the requirements? Can you provide an update on the assessment of imported cut flowers? I'm specifically looking to see if we're going to do a full biosecurity import risk analysis under the Biosecurity Act.
Thanks, Senator. How are you again? So the work we've been doing on cut flowers has been an ongoing process over a number of years. We've been doing it in a series of parts. So we've completed, I've got to find my right page.
So I'm happy to jump in. We've completed part 1, which was in June 2019, part 2, which was completed in June 2021, and then part 3, which is ongoing. The draft report for the devitalisation review was released for public consultation on the 20th of October last year, and following stakeholder requests, that consultation period has been extended and it will close on the 17th of February. And the draft report proposes to removing the requirements to devitalise imported cut flowers that are considered to be...
Yeah. So it's important to sort of distinguish what this element is. So this is not necessarily part of the full biosecurity import risk analysis that we're undertaking for cut flowers, which goes to all the various pests that could come in on cut flowers, but goes to one particular management mechanism, which is devitalisation of cut flowers. And so part 1 and part 2 were about sort of insect pests. The remaining part 3, is about other bacteria and viruses. But before we do that part 3 work, we wanted to come back to this particular question about, is devitalisation of cut flowers a requirement to manage biosecurity risk? And so that is a specific piece of work that we're consulting on at the moment. As Ms Georgiak has indicated, we released that draft for consultation in October. We had some requests to extend that period, which we have listened to, and we're waiting for the 17th of February when that consultation period will close.
Thank you. Pomelos.
Yes.
From Vietnam. Can you provide an update on what compliance measures will be put in place to protect Australia from citrus canker and other exotic pests and diseases in relation to importing pomelos from Vietnam?
Certainly, Senator. Let me flick to the right page. I think, as we've discussed previously, the approach to managing the biosecurity risks for the import of pomelos from the Vietnam, with a focus on citrus canker, but also other potential pests that could come on that pathway, is to take what we refer to as a systems approach So there's not one particular measure that manages all the risk of a particular pest, but rather it's all of the individual measures as a whole throughout the system that manage the risk. So what we've been working with the Vietnamese on is what we call the operational work plan, which takes the outputs of our biosecurity import risk analysis and all of the risk management that's required and turns that into practical things that exporters need to do and exporting countries need to be able to assure us have been done before imports can occur. So we're just working through those final phases of that operational work plan with the Vietnamese authority. There's a whole range of things that go into that. There are disease management requirements, disease monitoring requirements in the orchard that are required. There are requirements around how harvesting would need to occur. There are requirements about what might need to occur in the pack house, including sanitation and disinfection of fruit. There are inspections that are required to be done by the export authorities in the country of export, in Vietnam in this particular case. The certification requirements, those sort of phytosanitary certificates that need to be issued by the exporting authorities to provide us with those assurances. And of course there are inspections that our biosecurity officers would undertake at the border. So as I say, we're just in that final stages of clarifying all of that with the Vietnamese authorities, but that gives you a bit of a sense of the sorts of things that need to be part of that process.
And maybe one thing, Senator, to clarify, in doing that, we've also been engaging with Citrus Australia directly to listen to their concerns and also their feedback on the system's approach and address specific areas of concerns.
That's terrific. Thank you. I want to turn now to the implementation of the IGB and the IGAB recommendations. How many recommendations from previous Inspector Generals of Biosecurity and intergovernmental agreement on biosecurity reviews remain unimplemented?
So thank you, Senator. So as at the 8th of January, we've had 25 reviews since 2017. We had 279 recommendations in total. We've had 28 recommendations closed since January 2025 and 9 additional closed by the department since 2025. We have at this moment, at 8th of January, 75 recommendations. So of the 29 recommendations, that's 27% outstanding. But what I will clarify, given the IGB review, we have refreshed our governance and also enhanced our focus on outstanding recommendations. And in fact, within the next, by May, we will literally have another 45% of those 76 that are still outstanding closed. And then by November, we will have 1 recommendation outstanding. And while some of the longer period is required, it's where there are sort of systems or capabilities that need to be addressed, or they might have funding implications. So that we will absolutely have all of the outstanding recommendations, by and large, mostly done within the next 6 months. But we have made a significant effort to clear all the outstanding recommendations. And then for the 3 recent IGB reviews that were published on the 7th of November, that's 17 new recommendations. We have implementations plans already agreed for those and governance, and we've already closed 1 recommendation, and we will look to address those as soon as we can as well.
Oh, that's excellent. That's a great structure. So I'll get those numbers and we'll do this again at the next estimates. What's your assessment of the risk posed by the non-implementation of outstanding recommendations?
Yeah, so I think in the review that we undertook of the outstanding recommendations, as you would appreciate, Senator, some of those reviews, as I mentioned, were from 2017. So what we actually did is to sort of look at the themes to kind of group the recommendations about our regulatory maturity, about our processes, about our instruction materials. Some of them were very specific and have been overtaken by events. They're decisions or recommendations that relate to former governments that have been overtaken, or where they required funding, etc., that is just not kind of, it's again overtaken by events or not available. So we've grouped the recommendations because the fundamental issue is about addressing improvements to the system and significantly enhancing our, well, not enhance significantly, but continue to enhance our regulatory maturity. And we've actually agreed that through the IGB review of implementation of IGB governance, and also had an opportunity to talk to the new IGB about how we focus on the risk that relates to the recommendations versus some that are just business as usual.
Yeah.
So I think from a clear point of view, we have a clear path ahead and we have effective regulatory systems and processes, but we will continue to make improvements.
So one of my questions was about existing resources. So you've flagged that there were some recommendations that you didn't have a budget or resources in order to do?
Or they related to former programs. So, for example, one that was a long time ago was to do a very specific innovation program, which we've now moved on, and we have other innovation projects in place. So it's in that way. Some could be, well, for example, some were around enterprise-wide systems, etc. And so some of those obviously require funding and need to be prioritised within the department's resources.
Okay. Who within the department is accountable for tracking and driving implementation of the recommendations?
Yeah, so within the biosecurity group, we have a division, Biosecurity Strategy and Reform Division, which effectively owns the governance, the tracking and the monitoring. But as part of the refreshed IGB governance, the Deputy Secretary and the First Assistant Secretary group, not just within biosecurity, but those that have responsibility for recommendations that are across the department under IGB. They have collective oversight and governance, and specific First Assistant Secretaries will lead implementing some of those recommendations, but we have the different layers of governance around the accountability for oversight over how we're tracking. And in addition to that, the department has also established a new regulatory oversight Deputy Secretary level group that not just looks at how we're implementing IGB recommendations, it might also look at what we're progressing around regulatory reform, how we're improving best practice regulation, and some of the other conversations that some of my colleagues across the department have discussed a bit earlier today.
You've provided a lot of detail, provides me with a lot of comfort, but will you make that a public document, the update and where you're up to? And
yes, and we certainly can, Senator, and that's one of our proposed initiatives around transparency, around how we're tracking against IGB recommendations and implementation. And some of the governance mechanisms that I've just mentioned were publicly released in the department's response to the IGB recommendations, specifically those 3 reports that I just mentioned that were published in November, which we've now acted on. So we can certainly provide a bit more detail around that.
Okay, so a complete document or just the ones you've completed?
So I can definitely provide a summary of what I've just outlined and then how we can track going forward in terms of what we've delivered on.
Okay, great.
It won't be the full kind of every recommendation, it'll be consolidated, which we can provide on notice. But we are proposing to public something like that for transparency's sake.
Yeah, terrific. Okay. Terrific, thanks.
Okay, Senator Colbeck wrapping up.
Yep, thanks. Can I first up get an update on where things are at with mop top virus in Tasmania? Have there been any more reported detections? Is there work still being done looking for detections?
Thanks, Senator. Dr. Susie Collins, Acting Australian Chief Plant Protection Officer. So the potato mop top virus is still contained to Tasmania. There's been no detections on the mainland. There's some work being led through industry to work with state and territory governments and other industry participants to develop I suppose a national management strategy, for want of a better word, which will work through the surveillance and monitoring requirements on the mainland, work through capability uplift and training and awareness to make sure that people are ready and are able to detect it on the mainland should it make its way here, as well as talk about some of the movement conditions and restrictions out of Tasmania to try and mitigate the risk of it moving.
But to
So
clarify, Oh, sorry, Senator. No further detections at this point.
No further detection. Well, no further detections on the mainland. The restrictions within
further
Tasmania.
detection on the mainland would indicate there has been one, and I don't think there has been one, has there?
No. Sorry. No. There's been no detection on the mainland. Yes. No.
And nothing further in Tassie that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. Biosecurity Tasmania have been working with industry on their own management to, again, try and mitigate the risk and the impacts of potato mop top on the industry. There's not an obligation for them to report it up to the Commonwealth, but they're definitely managing it within their own state, and definitely no detections on the mainland.
But are you getting any reports, or are you seeking any reports?
There's some informal discussions, if you like. Tasmania do keep us in the loop on the sorts of things that are happening of significance, but nothing formal in that sense.
I've asked some questions previously with respect to the testing regimes. Are you satisfied around the efficacy of the testing regimes across the different jurisdictions?
So one of the activities that has happened at the national level and through the department coordinating was some national discussions around the diagnostics for potato mop top to see what the different arrangements were and for what reason, and to see if there was a need to have a greater level of consistency and harmonisation across that. So those discussions were with state and territory diagnosticians, as well as AusVeg, who've been very, very involved in helping and supporting industry on this particular issue. The discussions, the diagnostics may need to be different for different reasons. There's different reasons why we want to test for potato mop top. So for our imports, for instance, we're testing tissue culture material. For surveillance and monitoring, you might be testing leaf material. If you've got seed potato in storage, of course, you're testing tubers. So there's different diagnostic methods that might be more appropriate for those different scenarios. So but we have been, as I said, working with our state and territory diagnosticians and AusVeg as an industry representative to set all that out, so it's clear that there may be different tests for different reasons, and make sure there's consistency in that regard.
So have there been any changes to any of the testing regimes that you're aware of as a result of that work?
No, there hasn't.
Okay, fine. All right, I think that'll do me in relation to that. Can I just, is there any work still underway in respect of management of Varroa down the east coast? My reading of the regular reporting coming out of the honeybee industry is that it's had a fairly significant impact on the wild honeybee population, basically wiped all of that out within the 2 years since the incursion, which is similar to what occurred into New Zealand. So where are things at with management of that in this stage? Are there any jurisdictional restrictions? I think there are in the opposite direction to what there is for mop top virus into Tassie, but what about on them? Are there any other jurisdictional restrictions about movement of bees and honey?
So, yes, Senator. So the Varroa mite response has just finished its transition to management phase. So that was a 2-year period where there's a focus on uplifting the capability within the beekeeping and the pollination-dependent industries to better manage Varroa. That's just come to an end. A whole lot of resources were developed as part of that program, which are still available, that beekeepers and pollination-dependent industries can continue to use to help them manage the pests. We have heard similar information to you about the wild bee populations. They are significantly reduced in areas where Varroa is present, and particularly at high levels.
So So I might just add, Senator, that's also not kind of it. So there is broader, further research and ongoing farm management that will be led by industry, and they'll under the National Bee Biosecurity Program. And so there is ongoing work, notwithstanding the end of the formal transition to management.
So that's effectively a stage in the process you've come to.
It's the end of the cost-sharing phase, the national cost-sharing phase, where governments and industry committed over $100 million over the life of the program. But now it's longer term, and which was kind of the purpose of the 2 years. It's around the focus on slow to spread, and also helping the kind of beekeeping, pollination sort of industries around how to deal with this longer term.
So the contribution from government to support that phase has been $100 million.
Over the eradication program.
Yep.
So it included the eradication attempts early on, as well as the transition to management phase that we've just finished.
So the transition to phase management was $18 million as a specific call-out, which was some of the training and broader research and development and preparedness activities. And notwithstanding that ceased, obviously state and territories and other jurisdictions might continue to invest in particular ongoing management. But given that the national cost-shared eradication and transition to management period has ceased, that formal arrangement has ceased.
Is it possible to get a breakdown on notice of that total cost?
Sure.
So that now has to be cost recovered by the industry at what proportion?
Varroa is, again, a
depends which level it is.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the proportions in the
and I think it actually was a bit bespoke by the end.
It was. There was some categorisation processes through the response just to make sure we had that right. So the Varroa response actually was a Category 2 pest in the end. And Category 2 pests are 80% funded through governments and 20% through industry.
Is there a time frame for that recovery, for that 20%?
Oh, for the recovering their proportion. Underwriting the industry.
Yeah, so it generally would be a 10-year period.
Okay. So what about movement restrictions? Are there anything that remains in place as part of that overall management? Or is that managed by the various jurisdictions?
Yes, so there are still some movement restrictions in place at a domestic level, and they are managed by the relevant state and territory government, and that's so for Tasmania, for instance, obviously has restrictions on risk material and carriers of varroa, and as does WA in particular, Northern Territory, and other sorts of restrictions depending on which state it is.
Has part of the response been approval of actives for treatment of varroa? Has that been incorporated into that cost?
Yes. So part of the eradication program did include. And through New South Wales, who was the lead combat agency, working with APVMA on getting permits for chemical use for various chemicals to help manage varroa mite. That was part of the program. Yes.
So were those permits temporary permits, off-label permits, or are they permanently available? I'm curious to know how many new actives have been made available, and I can talk to APVMA about it a little bit later as well, but
I'd have to take that one on notice. There's definitely permits are still and chemicals still available, or currently available, I should say, for beekeepers to be able to use now, and there's definite interest in making sure there's treatment options available.
Yeah, so definitely, we can take it on notice, but also one for APVMA.
Okay, I'll talk to them as well afterwards. Okay, I think that'll do me for that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Collins. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to come back very quickly to a issue I did raise in the wrong outcome. That is protocols for the export of breeder, feeder and slaughter cattle to PNG. So I believe perhaps there has been some developments there.
Yes,
Okay,
Senator.
I'll just get an
My
update on
colleague
that.
just come to the
Thanks.
table.
We'll go from here to AFMA. I don't think it'll be much.
Thanks, Senator. So Australia has provided that draft protocol for breeder, feeder and slaughter cattle to PNG's Minister for Livestock for their consideration. We provided that last year, and responding to your correspondence, Senator, on that matter, we have followed up back with our counterparts in PNG for an update on that protocol. Whilst we haven't got a formal response back, hoping that when we do, we will be able to progress that work as a priority.
All right, great. All right, that's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Canavan.
Is there a protocol for live export to the US?
Yes, it'll depend on whether it's for breeder or feeder or the like. So that's one of our priorities that came out of the Livestock Protocol Committee, and that's certainly something we're working actively with our US counterparts on now.
Okay. Jolly good. Thank you on that. Good night. And we will now go to AFMA and let AFMA know. I don't know if there's going to be many questions, and if FRDC could be at the ready too, please. Are you off now, Ms Anderson?
No, I'm here till the very end.
I was going to say, if you go, can I come too? Okay, well, that's fine. Sorry? And I know my colleagues, they'll be ready for firing these questions off so we can get through all these agencies. Welcome, gentlemen. With my teeth clenched, would you like to make a brief opening statement?
No, thanks, Chair.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. All right, we'll go straight to questions. Senator Canavan.
Thank you. Look, I just have some questions about illegal fishing. There was a report last month, or actually, sorry, media release from yourselves and the Australian Border Force about 4 Indonesian nationals pleading guilty to illegal fishing in Australian waters. Are you seeing any trends in illegal fishing in Australian waters?
Thanks, Senator. Wes Norris, Chief Executive Officer, Australian Fisheries Management Authority. We've been experiencing a surge in illegal foreign fishing for about the last 4 years now. The trend that we are seeing is a improved ability for Maritime Border Command to conduct apprehensions, which then allows us to conduct prosecutions of those illegal fishers, leading to outcomes such as the one that you're referencing. In 24-25, we prosecuted, that's the wrong number, sorry, 273 individuals for illegally fishing, and the number's 127 so far this financial year.
Okay, all right. So you're putting down the increased monitoring or enforcement, not increased activity of illegal fishing?
I think that's correct, Senator. As I say, this is a trend that we've seen over the last 4 years or so. It really did start during COVID when Australia had reduced ability to deploy patrol assets, to deploy surveillance aircraft, and certainly to be able to apprehend foreign nationals and bring them onto shore. So we are working our way through that trend. The enforcement effort is a very important part of being able to resolve that. But equally, we work very closely with the Indonesian government, including the rollout of public information campaigns in the main ports that these fishers come from, to promote the dangers, both safety-wise and also legal-wise, for Indonesian fishermen coming to Australia.
Right, okay. So what extra enforcement activities have you been doing the last few years?
Yeah, excuse me, sorry.
You're right.
Senator, our AFMA-specific activities that have increased over the last couple of years include that very high level of prosecution that I was talking about. That's AFMA's responsibility, working with the CDPP. and the rollout of that intensive program of public information campaigns. We have also had supplementary funding over the last couple of years for what I would describe as small-scale bespoke operations to contribute to the work of Maritime Border Command, such as chartering helicopters when they're useful, deploying a contract vessel to take seized vessels once Border Force or Navy have apprehended the crews, things like that.
Right. How much is that funding?
That funding for this year was 1.99 million, Senator.
Okay. But are the primary compliance activities undertaken by the Australian Border Force, are they?
Yes.
That's the Maritime Border Command?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, Maritime Border Command is a multi-agency task force run by Border Force using Border Force and Navy vessels and contracted aerial surveillance.
Have they had increased funding for compliance activities as well?
I understand that they have, Senator. I couldn't go into how much it is or what for.
All right. What happens to the people apprehended or prosecuted, the 170 odd? What's the penalties? What's been the outcome of the prosecutions?
The penalties are very variable depending on the individual case, depending on where they are intercepted, how much catch and effort is on board their boats, and most importantly, whether they are recidivists, whether they've been through the court system before. And so what we generally see is for a first-time offender without extenuating circumstances, it'll be quite a low penalty, like a good behaviour bond. Where people have been through the courts before.
And hang on, they get sent back, presumably. Given they're illegally fishing, they're unlikely to be Australian citizens, are they? They're usually foreign nationals?
They're foreign nationals, so they're repatriated.
They get sent back, right? Yeah. Okay.
Whereas a recidivist or a case with extenuating circumstances like trying to evade apprehension, we've seen penalties up to 6 months in prison.
Right. That doesn't seem to be a huge deterrent at the moment, though.
I think it's very important for us to continue to have that chain of prosecution so that we do start getting the higher penalties handed down. And basically what it means is, someone who comes, fishes illegally, gets detained and prosecuted and then put in jail for, let's just say, 3 months. That's a very long period of time before they get home with nothing to show for their efforts other than probably a debt to the vessel owner. Coupled with that, in all these cases where we're prosecuting people, we destroy the fishing vessel itself. So we look for every opportunity to have the greatest deterrence effect possible. But as I say, there's also the diplomatic and community push that we need to couple that with to have best effect.
Right, okay. What is the maximum sentence for illegally fishing in Australian waters?
That's a very good question.
Okay.
Justin Bathurst, General Manager Operations. Senator, the penalties do range, and it does depend on which offence we prosecute for.
I'm just asking the maximum, so you've done the absolute worst of the worst. What can you get?
And I apologise, there is a slightly longer answer. There are two types of fishing illegally that we generally see. One is within the territorial sea, which is, put simply, much closer to the Australian mainland.
Yep.
And then they can also be charged with fishing illegally in the Australian fishing zone, which is generally further out. Fishing illegally in the AFZ does not carry a term of imprisonment, and that's in line with UNCLOS conventions, insofar as the legislation reflects the fact that the term of imprisonment can't attach to those offences. But for offences relating to illegally fishing in the territorial sea, there's a maximum, I believe, of 2 years imprisonment that can be imposed.
Okay, right. Okay, and that custodial sentence is always served in Australia, is it?
It is, Senator, yes.
There's no ability to transfer them back to...
There's not, no. Okay. It has to be, the sentencing options need to be fulfilled within the jurisdiction.
Is that a requirement of our Act, or...?
It's not specifically outlined under the Act, but it's a... I suppose the only way it could potentially happen would otherwise would be if the sentence was sufficiently lengthy that there could be an arrangement between governments for people to be exchanged, but we're not talking about terms of imprisonment that would be lengthy enough for that to apply. As the CEO said, the maximum we've seen is 5 to 6 months.
The 100 and would you say 170 so far this financial year, something like that?
127.
Oh, 127. Do you keep data on the country of origin of those individuals?
Yes, we do.
So what's the makeup?
They are, I think I'm correct, they're all Indonesian.
All Indonesian.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they all using fishing on Indonesian flagged vessels, or do they have a flag, or do they?
They're very, very small scale vessels, so they're not formally registered and flagged to a country.
Who's financing these operations?
That's a very good question, Senator. We have some limited information on that kind of thing from things like mobile phones that are seized from the cruise. I think these vessels are fishing primarily for sea cucumbers and to a lesser extent for shark fin. Both of those products are destined for primarily Chinese markets,
right?
And so the assumption is that that's also the chain of funding.
Okay, organised crime, effectively.
Certainly, that's the language that some Indonesian officials have used in conversations with us.
Do you have cooperation from Indonesian officials to try and disrupt these operations?
Yeah, we do have a really good relationship with PSDKP, which is their Directorate General of Maritime Surveillance. That includes joint patrolling and operations. We regularly place AFMA officers on board their patrol boats. And as I say, it also involves working in those community visits and also through the regional fisheries management organisations that both Australia and Indonesia are part of.
Are they coming from a particular part of Indonesia, or is it more spread?
There are a number of ports that they come from, but there are a couple in particular that we know to target.
Okay, all right. Could you just if you've got the numbers handy, could you just give us the numbers since 2020 on an annual basis? Of the apprehended, I think you used, or prosecuted?
I've only got the numbers of interdictions, so number of vessels intercepted going back that far.
So that's not people, it's vessels.
That's vessels.
Okay, all right. If you could give us that.
So 2021 was 64, 21-22 was 411, 22-23 was 164. 23-24 was 288, 24-25 was 274, and 81 so far this financial year.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair. That's it for me.
Just a quick one there,
sorry.
Senator Wish-Wilson.
Oh, sorry, same topic.
Yep, just a quick one. Could you just give us an update on the South East Trawl closure? Are you still continuing to do research on any recovery in stock levels of the various?
Yeah, thanks very much, Senator. So I guess the material change over the last little while was the AFMA Commission agreed at our meeting in September last year to roll out electronic monitoring into the fleet following a successful trial that had been done over the last 12 months. And what that is going to give us the ability to do is to have a far better and more comprehensive assessment of the fish that are coming up on the deck in terms of catch composition, including being able to work with industry for limited access to those trawl closures to assess whether the species that they were put in place to protect are actually rebuilding, primarily jackass morwong. And so looking at that, so that's obviously a future opportunity rather than something done. The other thing that's probably worth mentioning is the CMES surveys done by the CSIRO vessel, the Investigator, which did show some positive trends for some of the at-risk species that we have in those closures.
Okay, but there's no plans at all to reopen that fishery?
Not other than, as I say, from a sampling perspective to start with, to see what's happening in those closures.
Okay, and have you got a plan for that?
I'm not sure the level of planning that's gone into it.
Anna Willock, Deputy CEO. Senator, we haven't progressed as far as to actually plan for the activities that the CEO outlined. Electronic monitoring will be implemented in the South East Trawl fishery from 1 July this year. That'll give us a wider spread of the type of utility that we can put the cameras to, including catch composition, which, as you'd appreciate, needs expert reviewers that we're training up now to have in place. And that will then allow us to develop a bit of a research plan to monitor those closed areas using EM or potentially at-sea observers.
Okay, so that's on boats in the area that are still open to fishing around the South East Trawl, but in areas that have been closed off, if they're successful in camera trials, then you'll use that technology somehow on another boat, or is there any other research work going on apart from the investigator on biomass levels?
Senator,
deep DPMs, what do they call them? Daily egg production method studies, and
they're very useful for the small pelagic species, the daily egg production models.
Yeah.
We think that EM will give us the opportunity for a fairly low-cost monitoring ability in those currently closed areas, because whilst we're hoping that they've contributed to rebuilding, of course, we may have vessels go into the area under research permits and find that they may fish, there may be an absence of the fish, or there may be a presence. So we're looking at it as a lower cost way than largely independent surveys of the type that the investigator undertook.
Okay, and just last question, Chair. After
Okay, no worries.
This is, I promise. I was just interested in your review of the Commonwealth Fisheries Harvest Strategy Policy 2018. It concluded it remains a successful best practice foundation for management, but it said there was they identified a need for updated, more flexible approaches to climate change and data poor stocks. I mean, obviously, this fishery, I think, in your own words, was primarily closed because of climate change. How have you incorporated more of these ecosystem-based approaches into your fisheries management?
Yeah, thanks, Senator.
And are there other areas that are also being heavily impacted by climate change?
Yeah, thanks. Quite exciting couple of developments on that front. The AFMA Commission endorsed the AFMA Climate Risk Framework in the middle of last year.
Okay.
And what that is a quantified risk-based approach to being able to assess the vulnerability of each of the key species that we manage to climate impacts, primarily through ecosystem modelling developed by CSIRO, and then building those in a far more transparent way into our decision making. So this is a journey we've been on for a little while in terms of saying, okay, well, we know that, let's use jackass moorwong. We know that jackass moorwong is quite sensitive to climate, so yeah, we might want to just put a little buffer in or something when we set the TAC. This does that in a far more quantified way and in a far more defensible way based on all the information that we can get.
And has it showed any particular sensitivities to other fisheries since you've incorporated that? I think you have said in previous estimates there are other fisheries that have been heavily impacted by climate change as well.
Yeah, sadly, there's not many that are not impacted by climate change. Some are obviously far more heavily than the others, and the southeast it definitely is the hotspot, as we know from macro trends like sea surface temperature.
Okay.
There's a range of other species, tropical rock lobster in the Torres Strait, some of the prawn species in the north, and the like that are coming through that. As I say, this risk framework has been endorsed, and now it's down to us to implement it, which means running 100-odd species through it, which is obviously quite a big body of work.
And that's available for us to go and get off your website, is it, though?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Senator Wish-Wilson. In wrapping up with AFMA, Senator McDonald?
Oh, just continuing with the northern incursions of illegal fishermen. Will the impact of closing the Thursday Island Australian Border Force base impact the surveillance efforts?
Senator, are you referring to their office location in Customs House on Thursday Island?
Yeah.
If I'm correct, then Border Force is looking for a new office on Thursday Island. In fact, we're in discussions with them. We own a building on Thursday Island that has some vacant rooms subject to some repairs and maintenance. So no, I certainly haven't heard anything that would suggest that their capability is being reduced by that shift of office space.
I was told that their surveillance flights were down 22%. Are you seeing, and when the Prime Minister was there on the same day as the most recent illegal fishing boat was picked up, he said we'll throw resources at it. When you said that Border Force had a budget, I can't quite remember the words you said to Senator Canavan, whether it was an increase in budget or a suitable budget or whatever the words were. Is that an increase on what they had previously?
Yeah, as I say, Senator, I think ABF has received supplementary budget in the last couple of budgets for illegal fishing generally. Yes. I note the Home Affairs Minister announced the standing up of a Torres Strait specific operation this morning, which will respond to the sort of new manifestation of the existing threat of illegal fishing. In addition to that, Senator, we are in discussions with the Queensland Government regarding a potential contribution from the Queensland Boating and Fisheries Patrol, which would be a joint patrol effort between AFMA and QBFP. As I've said, we're engaging directly with the Indonesian government about it, and also the Papua New Guinean government, as they have a big stake in that region as well.
Okay. We've lost a lot of eyes on the water up there with the closure of the gillnet fishing fleet, a number of those boats going out. So I'm wondering if we've got less citizen surveillance than we had previously. Anyway, that's a suggestion. But last January, you were reported as saying that this was an unprecedented surge, and I think the previous year the same. So I don't get a sense that we're getting on top of this at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a perennial problem, and it's by no means new. While I said that we've been having a surge since sort of the last 4 years, this is something that Australia has grappled with for about 35 years that I'm aware of, including very big surges, for example, in the early 2000s.
Absolutely, it was pandemic out there.
Yeah, and so thankfully we're not at that level, and we think that we're responding in the way that will keep the issue under control. But I certainly don't discount its seriousness.
Okay, thanks.
Good, great stuff. I want to just congratulate AFMA for your fine work, and I remember those days because I was the deputy chair of the committee that looked into it, and it was horrific. And we shouldn't be alarmed at the numbers you're catching, because at least you're out there and you're getting them. So well done. Good stuff to AFMA. Okay, bye. Now what we will do is we're going to go and have a quick smoko, and we'll let everyone stretch. Oh, have you got one?
Just on the same topic.
Sure, go ahead.
I know that you want to go, and I shouldn't take long.
No, I've got 11 agencies to get through. That's what I'm for.
Understand. I got the text message. ABF, Border Force are running up a new surveillance contract, as I understand. Are you having any conversations around the capacity within the new aerial surveillance contract to maintain the requirements that you need?
I wasn't involved in the process.
No, Senator, AFMA hasn't had any discussions about specific contractual arrangements that might exist between aerial surveillance providers and MBC. We do have operational discussions on a regular basis about what our requirements are, but in terms of specifics around contractual discussions, no.
I mean, as we've just heard, it's a pretty important part of your capacity to surveillance. So when was your last formal briefing by Home Affairs or Border Force on the status and the timing of the new contract? Or you haven't received anything of late?
I certainly haven't received anything formally, Senator. We have staff that are working on the watch floor at Maritime Border Command, and so I don't doubt that they're involved in daily discussions about things like where aerial surveillance should be and and how it should be deployed.
But there's been no formal input into the requirements that you will have for that procurement?
Not by me.
No, and not by me, Senator.
All right, I'll put the rest on notice. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to blow wind up your backside two nights in a row. Well done, thank you, very good. Let's have a quick break. Now we are scheduled to break till 9:30, so let's go to 9:30. Gives everyone time to stretch their legs, and we'll come back with FRDC. Hansard, Broadcasting, fantastic. Thank you very much. I now welcome Fisheries Research and Development Corporation Managing Director, Mr. Sean Sloan. Welcome, Mr. Sloan. Do you wish to make any opening statement briefly?
No, thank you. Good to be here.
Great, thank you. Questions? Senator McDonald? Senator Canavan?
Some questions about, I believe, are you involved in a pilot project around the Queensland Fishing 2.0 app?
Senator...
I believe it was funded or helped part funded through the FRDC.
Not to my knowledge, so it's not to say that there isn't a project. Because...
Well, I've got a website here. Hang on, I'll just need to bring it up electronically then.
I'm not familiar with the project, sorry, Senator.
Okay.
I can certainly try and find out some information about that, but I'm not familiar with the project. So
that's electronically.
There's a link in the...
I know, but no. Just give me 1 second then.
It's only very recent that it was announced from the Media Hub, February of this year.
Do you want to go to Senator Wish-Wilson?
Yeah, if he's got questions, go for it.
Great. Senator Wish-Wilson.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of follow-up questions from some questions on notice that I received. In relation to the fluorphenicol aquaculture treatment permit, I remember, Mr. Sloan, when we had a chat before, you did a lot of testing before you approved that permit for aquaculture in Tasmania for salmon farming. Can I just check, is there any kind of monitoring requirements for APVMA or for...
Senator, just before...
Yeah,
this is FRDC.
No, I know, but is there any monitoring requirements at all that you're involved in, any research projects?
Senator, I think the monitoring that you're referring to would link to, would either be
state government EPA
state
does
government
stuff,
EPA
yes.
or APVMA work to inform.
But your FRDC hasn't been brought into the fold at all?
Not at this stage. There's
Right.
certainly, I think, discussions among stakeholders around whether and what research needs are there for the use of antibiotics, but we haven't at this stage been called upon to get involved. We have invested in vaccines, which is part of the strategy for improving and maintaining health of salmon in the industry, and the use of the antibiotics is an add-on to that treatment. But that's at this stage, that's not something FRDC is involved with.
Okay. In relation to the oxygenation trial, not the oxygenation offset program, which followed it, but in relation to the trial, the answers I received from my questions in December last year were that the project is still active until approval of the final report, which was received by you in December and was sent off to independent review. Has that review now been completed?
The independent review comments were received by us on the 5th of February, and we've provided those comments to essentially the project scientists, and we expect by the end of this month to have the report finalised and be able to disseminate the report. So there's a process that we go through once we have an independent review, peer review process like that, to give the actual project scientists the opportunity to take on board those comments and make any adjustments. So that's the process we're in right now, and expect to be end of this month.
Just as a matter in terms of the peer review process, I understand how that works for research publications. How does it work for a project? Do you appoint the independent reviewers? Who actually appoints them?
FRDC appoints the reviewers, and we would go to experts in the field, and it comes down to, one, the sort of expertise that the individuals have, but also their availability to do a peer review in the sort of time frame that we're talking. So, it's a very similar process to how a journal would access peer reviewers to review a scientific publication.
Okay, and will those details of who was involved with the peer review be released when the report's released, or is that kept confidential?
As I think I commented last time we spoke about this, it's not normal practice for us to release the names of the independent reviewers, largely so that we can make sure that they participate in those reviews without any sort of fear of retribution from the public and the wider community, and we get good expertise, scientific reviews without any sort of external intervention in that process. So we don't, as a matter of course, inform the community who does those reviews.
So will at least the reviews themselves be made public, like of the project and the data, or is that going to be incorporated by the scientists in a final report?
It's incorporated by the scientist who is leading the project, and it's not normal practice to release those independent reviewer comments. It's a process, an iterative process between the in this case FRDC commissioning an independent review, providing those comments of the report to the scientific leads of the project, and then the scientific lead of the project takes on board those comments and factors them into their final reporting.
Obviously, no, it's a very controversial issue, and I'm sure you already know that, especially in Tasmania. I mean, how do we have confidence that this has been an independent process? I mean, obviously, it's going to inform the offset program, which is $28 million of taxpayers' money. How do we have confidence that this process has been done independently, given the amount of money that's being put up by the government?
The peer review process in itself is something we use to instil confidence in the outputs that arise from these projects, but there's also the track record that FRDC has in its scientific integrity. So the outputs that we produce from these reports do get subjected to these peer review processes for that exact reason. And there's there's independent review of those reports, which is the important feature there. It's not going to people with any sort of vested interest. It's independent experts in the field. So I understand the sort of the reason for the question around transparency, but it's also
it's about transparency. It's not necessarily about your processes per se, but for example, the salmon companies they pay levies to FRDC, so there is a vested interest there in this report and in this oxygenation program. Do you see that as a conflict of interest?
I don't see it as a conflict of interest because it's a co-funded process, and a lot of the, as you know, the funding model that FRDC operates under is a combination of industry levy funds, Commonwealth matching funds, and there are other sources of funding as well. And that's an important feature of how all the RDCs operate. But I don't see any conflicts of interest arising because of the industry funding component to these projects. I think it's an important thing that industry is contributing to solving these issues through that funding model. The important feature of that gives the community confidence, I think, in this case, is that we go through this independent process to actually tender out the research in the first place. So in this case, Institute of Marine Antarctic Science in Tasmania, and then getting peer review, expert peer review processes around the publications that come from the research. So there's a number of steps that go to making sure that the outputs have rigour from a scientific perspective, and of course they get subjected to the scientific community when they get published ultimately as well. So.
They do, but they wouldn't have the raw data available, presumably. the final report, I hope it's going to be released, but we're not going to see the raw data. And I may come back to that. Could I just ask a couple of other quick questions in relation to what now you've February 5th, you've received the comments from the peer review, the independent peer review process. Can you give us a date on when the final report will be released publicly? Firstly, you've got any idea when that's going to be released?
Senator, I can't give you the exact date, but I understand, or the expectation is the report will be with FRDC by the end of this month, and we would then move swiftly to be able to publish that report. Our normal practice would be to publish a report like this on our website and then make it available to the public.
Okay. So in the time that you've received the report, 5th of December through to when you've going through this process now with the peer review feedback, what's been happening on the water in Macquarie Harbour? What's happened in the last couple of months?
So
in terms of the oxygenation.
Yeah. So there's obviously the work that was done to investigate this oxygenation method, which was essentially the first project, and then there was an interim project set up to continue that oxygenation work in the harbour. I understand
just with the Wombat, just with the one barge, or is capacity been added?
That's correct, with the one barge, the Wombat, and then that interim project will move to the scaled up version of the project, which is when there will be a higher level of oxygen delivered to the harbour, and the tender document that we released as part of that scaled up project was to deliver up to 18 tonnes a day of oxygen into the harbour. So we're at the final stages of entering a contract to finalise and commence that work, and that's been, I guess, a piece of work since the back end of last year. So to answer your question about what's happening now, that oxygen is still being delivered to the harbour under that interim project. I will say there has been some logistical issues, I think, with the infrastructure that have caused some disruptions, but essentially the project continues.
Okay. Very quickly, can you give us an update on conditions in Macquarie Harbour this summer? Are you familiar with the water temperatures and?
I have to take that on notice, Senator, but very happy to provide some information on that. Okay,
and look, last question, just also on a follow-up on a separate matter. Just in relation to the repeller shark deterrent technology, I might use your terminology. Let me just get it for you. Reviewing solutions to reduce unwanted fisher interactions with elasmo branches. The repeller technology, you said, was one of 9 promising methods identified to reduce shark depredation on fishing, but no trials have been undertaken as part of the project to date. And then you say a variation may be requested in 2026 to undertake trials of promising technologies. What does variation mean?
It just means that the company that we're working with could seek to extend the project and do further trials, could seek to come back with trialling of those other methods. It's not unusual for us to have a project that has a defined budget and time frame, for example, that turns into or gets extended. So
it identified 9 promising methods, including Repel-X. Are you able to tell us why there hasn't been any trials done on them to date, if they're promising?
I would have to take that on notice, Senator, to make sure I give you the right answer. I can't say.
Yeah, could you take that on notice? Because I'm just interested. I know, look, the politics of sharks at the moment, it's been on a significant matter of public interest, and I see just more generally there's calls to start a shark fishery up around the country. It's become political football. I've seen it bounce back and forward off the pitch many times over the years, but this is a technology that could help the fishing industry and also protect sharks. And I'm just concerned that this kind of thing might be put on ice because of the politics of sharks and shark fisheries. I'd be pretty keen to get an explanation as to why these technologies haven't been trialled.
Thanks, Senator. I'm confident that's not the reason from an FRDC perspective, but very happy to take that on notice and come back with more information.
Right. Oh, just quickly, this will be the last one, Chair.
Sure.
Okay, just to follow up a question I've been asking for many years. Cetrocephalus, long spine sea urchins, FRDC did an absolutely amazing job working with Victorian, New South Wales, Tasmanian government, hundreds of stakeholders and the Senate to recommend an urchin task force. And Minister, you of course be very familiar with this. Across the states to set up an urchin fishery and help solve a problem. There hasn't been a response to the Senate inquiry into this. Now, that was through a different committee. But is FRDC aware of... last time I asked, you had provided some feedback to the government on a response across different departments. Any updates, or Minister, any updates on when we might get a response? It was nearly 3 years ago. Is there anything happening on the ground, Mr Sloan, in terms of the urchin task force?
Thanks, Senator. The group, the task force, is still exists and still. In fact, I was talking to the different members of the task force only sort of during the first weeks of this year to talk about how do we
that's very encouraging to
take something forward, and so there are plans to have another meeting of the task force. There's been 2 workshops to date which have occurred in Tasmania and Victoria, and there's talk of another workshop occurring. But the focus of the members of that task force around, particularly how the industry can deal with some of the issues, particularly around the urchin barrens, where the urchins that are harvested from those areas aren't as good a quality for the human consumption market. So FRDC's tried to move ahead with that issue, and we're working with the Sydney Fish Market. There's plans to have a workshop with people in the supply chain involved in processing urchins, so that we can get a grading technique so that it just improves the use of that resource. It's not going to be the only answer to the issue, but that's I guess action that we've taken. In terms of the other sort of part of your question, it's probably best addressed by the department or one of the departments.
The Environment Department?
Possibly.
But you have provided feedback though, correct, to that report, the government's response? Could you take that on notice if you don't know that? Last time I'm pretty sure FRDC said they had provided some input into the government's response, but it was...
And likewise, as have we, the government. If you're asking about the status of the government response, we understand it's close, Senator.
It's close, okay. I'll look forward to it. I'm out of here in July, August, so it'd be nice to get a response before I leave. After many years working on this. Thank you. No, I know, that's probably true. Yeah.
Senator Canavan.
No, look, I'll put my questions on notice, given the time.
Sorry
about that.
Thank you very much. We'll let you go, Mr Sloan, and we'll now call Australian Wool Innovation via conference. And then Australian Livestock Export Corporation Live Corp straight after you. If you could be in the back of the room, be great. Thanks. Right. Okay, I'll now welcome Chief Executive Officer of Australian Wool Innovation. Oh, we're just going to suspend. Excuse me. Sorry, but I've just been asked to suspend. Sorry. Quick. Thank you very much. Mr Roberts, I've just been informed by the committee that you can go. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, but there has seemed to be a mix-up on our list, so I do apologise. I'll just let you know I would never call any of you, but anyway, sorry about that.
Thank you, Chairman, and I just did want to introduce our new Chairman, George Millington, but we'll look forward to the next opportunity.
Well, no, look, let's do that. Sorry, you've been called here. I'm sorry, I don't know how that happened, but look, let's do that very quickly. Mr. Chairman? Yep.
Yeah, over to you, George.
You're not going to believe it, Mr. Millington. Your vocals have gone to shit. Sorry, mate, I can't express anything else at 10 o'clock at night. You're not going to believe that. It's just not meant to happen. Really sorry. Try one more time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, now you're perfect. Sorry about that earlier comment. Mr. Millington.
I did have a quick opening statement I could make about the wool industry and where we are if people were interested.
Well, look, we've got you here. Is it long? Sorry, Mr. Millington. We've got 9 witnesses.
Not that long. It'll be about 3 minutes.
Okay, fire. Go, Mr. Millington.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's George Millington and I became chair of AWI in November 2025. I'm a wool grower from the mid-north of South Australia. Recently, we have seen some much-needed good news for wool growers with a significant lift in prices for all types of wool. Seasonal conditions have varied dramatically from bushfires in WA and Victoria to extremely high temperatures in late January across parts of New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia. The overall rise in prices for wool over the last 12 months has been 38% and 68% for some broader wools. This improvement, which puts more dollars in the pocket of growers, is due to a supply crunch and an increasing demand from major customers, including Europe and especially China. The most recent sheep producer intention survey sees a 38-point improvement in sentiment among wool growers to a positive score of 19. My home state of SA leads the bounce back to a positive score, and this follows the worst seasonal conditions in 100 years. We're being told by international brands they want sustainable fibres, and wool fits this. We do need to see, however, this flow through to even higher prices at the farm gate. In Europe, moves to crack down on unnatural fibres could backfire and produce labelling laws which may give wool a rating worse for the environment than a synthetic fibre made from fossil fuels. We are working with the industry and DFAT to right that wrong. At the same time, some good news in terms of on-farm research. The bioharvesting work we are doing in the University of Adelaide is going well, and work continues on a vaccine against fly strike, and there are some promising developments there. So there we go. Hopefully that was just 3 minutes.
Mr. Millington, thank you so much. Mr. Roberts, thank you so much. We're sorry it got to that, but unfortunately, whoever asked didn't have any. Anyway, I do apologise, and hopefully we don't see it the next round of estimates because everyone's too embarrassed to ask you back. Enjoy the evening. Thank you very much, and we'll now call Live Corp.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And after Live Corp, we will be seeking to be joined by MLA. Mr. Settler, stop smiling. Everyone think we're having fun here. No. That's just a private joke. All right, now I now welcome officers from Live Corp, including Mr. Collier and Mr. Settler.
Thank you.
Would you like to make a brief opening statement?
I would, thank you, Chairman Searle. I've chopped it up a bit, so we'll keep it short. It's been a massive year for exports, for live export, particularly to Indonesia. It highlights the role Australia plays in supplying red meat, milk and fibre, and bolstering food security to Indonesia in particular. In 25, Indonesia imported nearly 600,000 livestock from Australia, up 9% year on year, and making up 51% of Australia's total live exports. In 25, some noticeable markets came back online, including Mexico, with just over 20,000 cattle, and Turkey. We had a successful conference in Perth in November with over 300 participants across the supply chain, including international speakers, ministers from both sides, sponsors and delegates, and we'd like to thank Minister Collins for providing a video address, given it was a sitting week. I think for us, the latest community sentiment that was conducted in late 25 showed The Australian public's acceptance of the industry has grown substantially since the first survey in 2019. There was a dramatic decrease in the number of participants concerned about conditions on live export ships. There was increased recognition that Australia's animal welfare standards improve conditions in overseas markets. Over 60% agreed. We've been working hard with both the Australian and Indonesian government, importers and exporters from Australia to help Indonesia with vaccination programs for foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease. Wayne and I are happy to answer questions that you may have, Senator. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Senator. Questions, Senator Canavan?
Yes, thank you. Look, I just wanted a quick update. I'll be quick, sorry, Mr Senator, given the time, but I think you're doing a report on benchmarking cost competitiveness in Australia's live export supply chain. I think that's due for publication in March, is that right?
Benchmarking cost
or to be finalised, maybe I should say.
That might be when the final report is provided to the
so not necessarily publication, but final. Have you got any initial findings from that report or that work?
I haven't seen any on that particular component of it at the moment. There's a parallel project looking at competitiveness, which has been looking at different breed performance and things like that. I've seen some results coming out of that. I haven't seen the benchmarking one yet.
Is that report factoring in cost recovery arrangements in the Australian context?
Well, regulatory costs would be part of the overall consideration of costs.
Will it take into account the recent changes or announcements in MOEFO around those?
Well, yeah, obviously, given they're fairly new, we'd have to consider those in the context of them, but obviously the work that's been done to date wouldn't have been considering those.
Okay, all right. Are you doing any work to assess the impact of the impending live sheep ban?
No, at the moment we don't have any research into that. Most of our research was done prior to the decision.
Okay, all right. You're not getting any. Are you taking any feedback about potential impact on cattle exports at all from potential issues of mixed vessels and the like?
Not specifically, Senator, around the mixed vessels. We do have a strategy session in February with the board. And the management team, and then also with ALEC, our service provider, about the impacts and what does our next 5-year plan look like as we move into our new 5-year plan process. So we delayed our 5-year plan last year, and we'll do a new 5-year plan this year that will analyse those.
Okay. I'm not sure if you heard the evidence earlier from ABARES on the potential for carbon farming to take up a lot of agricultural land. Is that something that your members are at all concerned about? On pastoral land that's used for live export?
I think if you speaking to our members around supply, they have concerns around supply for markets. I think one of the challenges for competitiveness for Australian live export has been the higher price due to lower supply of livestock out of Australia.
Right, so potentially impact on scale and viability?
So anything that would impact livestock supply would put upward pressure on Australian livestock prices and competitiveness globally.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Chair. I'll leave it there given the time. Sorry if it's short. Short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Senator. Mr Collier, thank you very much. Thank you. We will let you go. And we will now call MLA. I welcome Meat and Livestock Australia, including the Managing Director, Mr Michael Crowley. Mr Crowley, do you wish to make an opening statement?
No, thanks. We're happy to jump straight into questions.
Fantastic. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd just like to ask a couple of questions about the different ways of measuring methane or reporting on methane emissions. I believe you calculate some statistics using different GWP methods. What does that stand for exactly? Global warming potential, presumably?
Global warming potential, yeah, that's right. So we do a report, CSIRO do an annual report for us that look at the contribution of red meat and livestock to the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory, and that uses GWP 100, which is CO2 equivalent.
Right.
But then we also look at reporting on methane as the main emissions from red meat and livestock. And that's done under GWP STAR, looking at the shorter-lived effect of methane. Has higher warming potential, but a shorter-lived gas in the atmosphere. So we're looking at dual reporting, and our official numbers under the greenhouse gas inventory are the net position of the industry at a national level. And then we're also looking to make progress on our net methane position and looking at efficiencies around emissions intensity per kilo of production, which is where we can build in the productivity-driven positive environmental outcomes.
Okay. All right. So which measure do we use in our Paris reporting?
The GWP 100.
100. So that...
So CO2 equivalents.
Right.
So converting methane and any other emissions to CO2 equivalents.
Okay. And so that increases the amount of emissions from Australia's cattle sector relative to the GWP STAR? It's two different ways of looking at it. It looks at methane when it's converted to CO2, it spreads the warming potential out over a longer time period. But when methane is used on its own, it's a shorter-lived gas, higher warming potential. But our net position on methane is an area we've been asked by industry to do a lot more work on, because there's a lot of evidence that shows through actively growing pastures, through active land management, we can sequester carbon from the atmosphere as fast as we release it through methane as part of the natural carbon cycle. So there's going to be a lot more work happening around the biogenic methane cycle. And we're also partnering with the Zero Net Emissions for Agriculture, CRC, in that space. So I mean, am I reading that right, that with that potential for the carbon cycle to be factored in, notionally you could have a situation where the emissions from the cattle industry in regards to methane, at least, putting aside other emissions, but methane emissions could be net zero?
That's the theory that we're really wanting to run to ground, because looking at methane and the natural carbon cycle as opposed to methane from burning fossil fuels is also a really important aspect for us to tackle. And we're looking at collaborating internationally.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, if they burn wood chips to create electricity, they release carbon dioxide doing that, but it doesn't normally get accounted for as an increase in carbon emissions.
Well, I think the way
it's renewable because the cycle.
I guess for us, we're just looking at the whole of life cycle and being able to accurately account for that. Because what we're also finding is that as we improve efficiency in our production system, we're delivering a really positive environmental outcome. So the productivity-driven outcomes are really fundamental to how we drive adoption of any practice change.
Do we have flexibility under the Paris Agreement to report this the way we like?
Not at the moment. Right. So the international reporting standards are quite firm, but I think if we have enough data and evidence to support our methane position backed up with data and evidence, we'll be in a stronger position to have those conversations.
Right. Are you working with other countries to push this case?
Absolutely.
Yep.
We've got some partnerships with New Zealand, the North Americans and Europeans are all very interested in this space.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm just mindful, has Senator Whitten got questions on this? Yes. Okay, look, I might rotate the call given the time, Chair. Sure. If there's time, I'll come back. But.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some questions around Bovea. So, I note on your website that over $1 million has been spent on a number of research projects. Since the conclusion of those studies, we've seen adverse impacts of Bovea on dairy cattle in Denmark that is being investigated by the officials there. Is your department, or are you across the situation, and are there any concerns with the ongoing use in Australia?
So we're certainly aware of those issues that have been raised. DSM is the company that's commercialised the product. They've been actively following up any complaints overseas. We haven't seen any issues or adverse animal impacts in the trials that we've conducted here in Australia. And it's certainly been something that we've been discussing with DSM about further work.
Okay. Do you think with what's happened overseas would warrant the pause in using Bovea in Australia?
Certainly in discussions with DSM and the statements that they've made, the product has been registered in, I forget how many countries overseas, it was well over 50, and it's been through a whole range of regulatory approvals around the world. We will continue to do our due diligence on the use in both intensive and extensive feeding systems here in Australia.
Okay. Does MLA make recommendations on labelling practices, such as labelling whether beef has been fed Bovea?
No, not at the moment. At the moment, that would be APVMA. If there was a need to regulate those products, that would be a decision that would be made off the back of the research that we would do. So at the moment, there are no residues in meat or milk, and there are no productivity claims being made by DSM on Bovea, which means it doesn't fall into a regulatory category at the moment.
Would you support clear labelling on it?
I think that if there was changes to those regulations and we need to do some more work to make sure that those products were meeting those regulatory frameworks, we'd be more than willing to do that.
Yep. And just as an aside, what about in terms of labelling, grass-fed, 100% grass-fed, grain-fed? I believe there's some confusion about what is true amongst those terms.
The best resource in the industry for those raising claims, AusMeat, is the custodian of the language, and there are very clear definitions of the raising claims that can be used in the trade for grain-fed, for grass-fed, pasture-raised, fodder-fed, a whole range of different raising claims. There's a matrix that AusMeat maintain. That's the source of truth.
Not clear to me, because when I go and buy grass-fed, I think I'm getting grass-fed.
Yeah.
And I've read today that isn't the case. So
yeah, I think that the description on the label will be very clear, and I'd be asking the butcher or the retailer to, if you needed more evidence, they need to be able to back it up. So it's generally the commercial claims need to line up with the language of the industry.
Yeah, I'd like to think that was the case with the commercial retailers. In your annual report under Note 5, Other Income, can you please explain what the following categories of income relate to? So I understand processor contributions, cooperative funding, the R&D partnership income.
Yep. Yeah, so what we do is through the income that we get through the matching cap, so 0.5% of GVP of the red meat industry is made available for R&D. So once we've matched the levy contributions, we can then attract eligible sources of investment to match for R&D. So we might do projects with funding from state governments, universities, private sector businesses that are eligible sources of funding to leverage those levy dollars further against industry priorities. So we're matching a federal government dollar with an eligible source of other income from a research partner through the MLA donor company.
Okay. Is there any risk of conflict of interest in any of those partnerships?
Generally, those conflicts are managed through the approval process. Those projects would typically come through an open tender process, would be reviewed by an independent group and recommendations coming to MLA on those investments, and then we have a very robust internal governance process as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Whitten. Senator Canavan.
I'll leave it there as well. Put on notice other questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We will now let you go. Thank you, Chair. And thanks, Mr. Cowley. And we'll now call Dairy Australia. Welcome, Dairy Australia, and Mr. Roderick, Dr. Schaefer and Ms. Timms. Do you wish to make an opening statement, Chair?
Senator, a short one, since we're all new up at the desk.
Yeah, lucky you. I'd like to say it gets better because I can't guarantee. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Well, thanks for the invite. My name's Paul Roderick. I'm Chair of Dairy Australia and a dairy farmer in Harrisville, southeast Queensland, and we run a multi-generation farm business. And I joined the board in 2000 and became chair last year, or the year before last, sorry, 2024. With me today is Dr. Matt Schaefer, our new CEO, and has been with us since July last year, and Susanna Timms, our General Manager of Sustainable Dairy. Matt has a strong background in agricultural experience with Hancock Ag and Datagene, and Susanna leads our work with sustainability, trade, development, industry issues. I'll table the rest of the statement. That's an introduction, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chair. It's always good to see someone who's had dirt under the fingernails across the table. Congratulations.
Milking this morning, so.
Tough gig, that one. Okay. Right, questions. Senator Wish-Wilson.
Go to someone else, Chair, if there's... I'm happy to ask questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Whitten. Did you have questions? I'm sorry.
One question.
I'm happy to go to you first.
Yeah, Senator Whitten?
Yeah.
Well, I had one of the W's, I just got the wrong one. Senator Whitten. All right.
G'day. Could I...
Yeah, we don't want to be rude.
Could I ask your thoughts on the sale and consumption of raw milk?
Okay. From a farm perspective, it's not something that in my lifetime around dairy that it's been done. So it's obviously not allowed through the various legislations through the states. So yeah, and it's not something that industry even entertains or promotes. I'm not aware of it happening generally.
So there's no... nobody in the industry would be interested in selling raw milk?
I wouldn't say no one would be interested in it. I think dairy farmers generally are aware of the risks around supplying raw milk. I'm not saying farmers don't drink their own milk, but they control the supply chain and the cold chain for that milk. But there's certainly not widespread interest in promoting or going down the path of raw milk sales.
Okay. Do you have any concerns around the dairy industry at the moment?
There's always concerns, but it's usually things out of our control around weather. We've had some significant weather events, particularly in parts of the south with unprecedented drought. But they have had some recovery. Things are looking reasonable in particularly those areas in southwest Victoria, parts of Gippsland and South Australia that were badly affected by drought. There's always concerns about things like water and then global markets. So those things prey on farmers' minds and they're in the background, but there generally is stability in the dairy industry at the moment. We're not seeing large growth, but we're seeing stability, and which is promising.
Do we import much milk or milk products, or are we a net exporter?
We do import products. I'll pass over to my left to get some specifics on that as far as volumes.
Yeah, we do import product, but we don't import any fresh milk, but mainly cheese.
Cheese, butter?
And a bit of butter, yes. There's been some press on that recently,
okay.
Yes.
Is the industry growing or declining? And I'm interested in, are we going to one day end up drinking Chinese milk? Because I'm a supporter of the dairy industry. I'd like to see you guys flourish and that, but...
like I said before, we're static in our milk volume, up and down 1% or 2%. This year we're predicting us to be down 1% to 2%. But by no means are we at the stage where we'll be importing fresh milk. We've got enough milk to supply our domestic needs, but it is important we have a strong industry in all the states, and so they're supported by different price structures. And in the south, where the majority of milk is produced, it's supported by domestic and export. But in a region like where I am, it's supported by the domestic market. So, yeah, look, I don't see a future in that. I see a future in dairy production, and we are seeing slightly less farms, but those farms are growing in scale.
Yep. How are the big retailers treating dairy farmers at the moment? Are they?
Oh, no. This could go on for hours.
There's I think there's definitely been an improvement with the relationships over the time, and particularly in the last 3 or 4 years. Our advocacy bodies through ADF, our peak body, and our processing bodies through ADPF, and their voice through ADIC have been very vocal on that, so that there's plenty of media around, and they are held to account on certain issues.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Whitten. Senator Whish-Wilson?
Yeah, I was just wondering, appreciating that you're new as Chair, Mr Roddick, I was going to ask you a question about Dairy Australia's involvement in the prosecution of Tasmanian dairy company Van Dairy, which was before the Magistrates Court in Tasmania in November last year. The case has been adjourned, but it's the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, that's bringing these charges. Has Dairy Australia had any involvement in the case against this company? Have you been provided any evidence?
It's been spoken about, but have we got any specifics?
I'll just give you a bit of brief history. I brought this up with Dairy Australia back in 2021. I worked with some locals to break the story on animal cruelty.
Yep.
And the Tasmanian government started investigating it in 2021, but it's taken nearly 5 years to get charges laid. But I'd just be interested, and I think Dairy Australia did provide a consultant to go down there and work with the company to try and sort out some of their issues, especially around effluent management.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just wondering if you've had any ongoing interest in the case or active involvement in the case.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, since I've been there, we've had none.
Okay, so no, you haven't provided any evidence to the...
Not to the court, to my knowledge, no.
Okay, that's my only question, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Canavan, did you have any questions?
Just quickly, I wanted to ask about geographical indicators and the risk of those being imposed on the industry through an EU FTA. Are you concerned about that?
Yep. It's been pretty prominent in the last, particularly even in the last week or two. And I stated before about our advocacy bodies have been very vocal through ADIC, the Australian Dairy Industry Council. We've provided them some information that Susanna might be able to elaborate on, but generally speaking, there is a concern, and there's a negotiation process, and I'll pass to Susanna.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. It's very front of mind for the industry peak bodies at the current time. And the ADIC's position on that is that any final agreement on GIs must not restrict the use of common cheese terms such as parmesan, and should reflect the long history of cheese making in Australia.
Mm. Very good, well said. And just more generally about an EU free trade agreement, what are there concerns that if we completely go to free trade, that we could be flooded by subsidised EU products? I presume this is something very difficult to deal with in an FTA because they're behind the border sort of trade measures that influence production and costs. Is that a concern in the dairy industry?
The current trade flows between our jurisdictions are deeply imbalanced,
right, and
there's certainly anxiety around that. And at the moment, the EU is exporting 70,000 tonnes of dairy to Australia, and we, in return, are exporting 1,600 tonnes back to the EU.
Do we have many estimates of what sort of, or any estimates of what sort of level of protection those subsidies amount to?
Senator, I might just jump in.
Yep.
I appreciate we're talking to the R&D body here. I appreciate you have industry expertise at the table, and
yep,
I just want to be clear that it would be the industry bodies that would be advocating these positions rather than Dairy Australia necessarily. So very happy for you to use the expertise.
The question I've just asked is a pretty factual one, though. Do we have any estimates, and I'm happy for the department to jump in if they have anyone here, but any estimates on what is a level of these subsidies if converted to some kind of percentage of value added basis?
So I think, Senator, we'd have to take that question on notice and come back to you with that one.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right, that's it for me, Chair.
All right,
Dairy.
Mr Roderick, you're probably going to be up milking in about 4 hours, but Dr Schaefer and Ms Timms, thank you very much for coming in. Good luck. See you next round. Let's now call APVMA. Welcome, Mr Scott Hanson, Chief Executive Officer of Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority. Do you wish to make a brief opening statement?
If I may, Chair, just to say that there's been a couple of references to us in various other testimonies here today, so I might just jump to, I think Senator Colbeck asked a question about actives for varroa. There are 6 actives that are registered for use on varroa in Australia. 3 of them are actually in registered products, registered chemicals, so that's ongoing registration, and 4 of them are in permits. That's it, Chair.
Are there any other things in the works?
Sorry, what?
Are there any other thing? Is there anything else in the works?
Yeah.
That might assist?
We've got a couple of permits applications in foot at the moment from state and territory governments that we're working through with them.
That stops me asking that question.
Great.
Doesn't mean I don't have others though.
I've got Senator Wish-Wilson, you got some questions?
Well, I didn't, but I do have one. I did kind of touch on it with FRDC. We did talk last estimates, Ms Hanson, around the approval for the aquaculture treatment permit for fluorophenocal. I just wanted to clarify whether there was any feedback loops once that approval's been made. I know you did testing on it. Is there any kind of feedback loops in terms of how it's being used?
Yeah, so, and to be clear, we haven't been doing the testing. Part of the permit condition...
Sorry, you haven't been...
We haven't been doing the testing. So part of the permit conditions is that the applicants need to comply with a detailed testing regime that is laid out by Tasmanian EPA.
Yeah.
And that involves regular testing of water, sediment and fish at regular intervals and at a testing regime that's been set out by the EPA. I believe their most recent set of published results was in mid to late December that reflected the results from the first round of treatments. We get shared those results, obviously, and we look at them against what we expected to see, both in terms of presence in the water column, presence in sediment, and so forth.
But you have no oversight, though. No formal role.
We have capacity under the permit to obviously call in any data that we require them to keep, which is around treatment times, levels, and any of the data from the surveillance. But the program is run, monitored, and maintained by Tasmanian EPA.
And look, just as a matter of interest, there was some reporting in the last few days around oxytetracycline, and that was approved by APVMA some time ago for use in aquaculture. Is it your understanding that fluorophenocal was kind of designed to replace that as a product that the salmon industry would use?
So my understanding is the fact that fluorophenocal is what the salmon industry is wanting. In the first instance, an application for an emergency permit was put in to try to deal with an immediate issue, but we've been told that their long-term ambition is registration of the product and that they'd be collecting data as part of these permits to be able to support that application. We keep saying the industry, it's actually Abbey Laboratories Proprietary Limited who's the applicant for the permit and also who's expressed an interest in registration.
And what would getting long-term registration mean in reality, effectively? What does that mean?
That means running through the full gambit as a permit needs to do with regards to meeting all the safety criteria, efficacy and trade criteria. We've flagged that because this permit is a one-use expiry in September, that's the beauty of permits. We can actually use both temporal and spatial sort of controls to help mitigate some of the risks. We've said that they would need for a broader ongoing registration, a lot more information about antimicrobial resistance.
Right, okay.
And so there's additional burdens that we would put on them in terms of coming back if they sought registration. Our capacity and our legislation allows us to move quite swiftly if we need to cancel, we need to change, we need to vary a permit.
Yeah.
Once a product is registered, the process for removing that registration is quite cumbersome, as you know, on some of our...
okay, but the current permit expires in September.
That's right.
And if they don't get a long-term registration, then can they apply for another one-off application?
They can apply for another one,
right.
And that'd be judged on the merits of the information they provide.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to get an update on performance. At Senate estimates last, it was, well, in October, it was revealed that 30% of progress, 30% of major pest applications were overdue. Has there been any improvement in on-time performance?
No, is the short answer, Senator. And
right. Disappointing news. All right.
There's probably another quarter yet before I'm going to have any positive news for you on that front. Timeframe performance has gone backwards again. For the data we're going to release soon that ends at 1st of July, our overall timeframe performance is down to 74.4% of all applications completed within timeframe.
That's of all. What's it for major applications?
For majors, it's... I'd have to take that on.
All right, well, we'll probably put a few of these on notice, get some more details.
That's okay.
Sorry.
So for what we call majors in the past are the technical ones. For that quarter, we're in the high 30s, 36 and 37% finished within timeframe performance.
So over 60% not on time.
That's right. Can I these numbers? I know they're triggers for conversations, but can I've got to give some context to some of the underlying pieces here. We have a really perverse way of measuring this in the fact that something only becomes overdue when we finish it. So if we finish a large number of applications in a quarter and they're all carried into that quarter as overdue from previous ones, we have bad results.
Right.
And so some of the positive things for you to take back, we completed 546 registrations and permits in that quarter, which is almost 100 more than we did in the previous quarter. We completed 79 technical applications, which is the highest number in a quarter that we've done for a year and a half. We completed 20 emergency permit applications this quarter, which again is the highest we've done in over a year in any quarter. We're conscious of the fact that timeframe performance measurement, especially at that overall level, is an important measure for us and trigger for us to talk to industry and to the community about. But we're trying to stay well connected with them to highlight to them that, in that last quarter, we actually received 1,358 applications and we completed 2 short of that. So we didn't add to our overall work list. And during that quarter, we did a complete handbrake stop on how we use reference products as a streamlined pathway to rebuild that process with industry into a really robust process to be able to use reference products for applications. We rejected the highest number of poor quality applications, 25% more than we've done on any others, to actually help clean up the number of poor applications we have coming through the door. All of these things took time and took effort to do that distracted us from tick and flick application processes. So I guess another quarter of results trying to sort of claw our way back through this backlog. But we're staying well connected in terms of industry and keeping them updated and trying to give them greater predictability about where we're going to get to.
Okay. All right. I'm going to just quickly ask, you did say at last estimates you'd be hiring or using more external scientific reviewers. Have you hired more since October last year?
We've got more scientific reviewers. We've got an 80% turnover in my senior executives that are running the business as well. We've got additional delegates on board and have started up in the last quarter as well. It's a full court press to put the best people in the best place to do the job.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Mr Hanson. Travel safe.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Senator Whitten.
Yeah,
sorry.
I've only got a couple. Are you aware of the 2000 study by Williams et al. Safety evaluation and risk assessment of the herbicide Roundup and its active ingredient glyphosate for humans? That was retracted by the Journal of Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology.
Yes.
Just recently?
Yes.
You're aware of that?
Yep.
It did state there was some serious ethical concerns around that study. This was a cornerstone study that was retracted on the basis it had been tampered with by Monsanto, the producer of Roundup. In the APVMA reference list for a final regulatory position of glyphosate, 13 of the 18 studies referenced that were after 2000 cited the paper. Have you undertaken a review of the decision in the wake of the retraction?
So we had a look when that news came out. We're constantly monitoring to see if there's anything new in the international arena on any of the chemicals we have registered over here. So we obviously paid a lot of attention when that one came out and that retraction came out. We had a look at what we'd actually relied upon with regards to that study. It was not one in which we had heavily relied upon. It was actually a study that looked at other data that had been collected, and it analysed that other data whilst we had gone back to those original data points ourselves in terms of our assessment. Yep. So it wasn't a cornerstone of any of the decisions, and we're comfortable with that our decisions and our proposals, or our regulatory decisions around glyphosate continue to stand.
Which studies do you rely on the most heavily around glyphosate in particular?
Typically, we rely on those peer-reviewed studies that provide data at large-scale levels. And it depends on whether you're talking about studies for human health, studies for efficacy, studies for residues, studies for plant safety. Like we
residue for human health is what I'm particularly.
Yeah, so there's a whole range of those ones that are listed in the appendix of that final regulatory decision for glyphosate.
That specifically identify residues for human health?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how much do you take into account sponsors of scientific papers when you rely on those documents?
No, so every piece of information we get, we look at the underlying quality of the science. We look at whether it's been peer reviewed, we look at the data, if we can find the data rather than just the paper that reflects data. So that we can do our own assessment on it. We also look at how international regulators have looked at that data or in the reports. So we rate every scientific input that we have based on the qualities as to whether it's raw data that comes from somewhere that we can trust, whether it's been peer reviewed and whether it's been relied upon by other regulators.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now we'll let you go. Thanks, Mr Hanson.
Thank you.
And we will call Riddick, Agri-Futures. Right. I now welcome from Agri-Futures Australia, Mr Veach, the Chair, and is it Miss Ella? Miss Casey, I'm sorry. Miss Casey. So do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, thanks, Chair. As you would appreciate, I've been in the role 4 weeks and Managing Director Brianna Casey's been in the role 3 weeks, so we will do our very best.
Even better. You don't have to
with
answer
that.
anything.
And Senator Sturl, I just want to point, you mentioned earlier about having a bit of dirt under the fingernails. I come to the role having grown up and lived on a farm, and I was a fourth generation shearer, so I've got a bit of an idea about hard work and what life's like on the land.
I like you already. Just need to get you an MC licence, you got the trifecta.
Well, yeah. My brother's a truck driver.
Even better. that's your opening statement.
It's short and sharp. I just
love your
time
style already. Fantastic. That's tremendous. Okay, Mr. Veitch, questions. I think Senator Wish-Wilson, you have questions.
I do, but it may not be. It's a difficult one, Mr. Veitch, because you may not be able to answer some of them, given you weren't in the role. So perhaps it's to the minister or to the department. When was the position for chair advertised?
We can just get that information for you. Just bear with me, Senator. So, for AgriFutures, I don't know if I've got. The position was advertised nationally was it the chairperson role? Sorry.
Yeah, for the chair's role.
From the 3rd to the 21st of September 2025.
Okay, thank you. And when did the interviews happen?
You're going to test my memory, but it was I think through November and early December.
And the announcement was made on the just prior to Christmas, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how many people were interviewed for the position?
I'm reluctant to go into details of the overall recruitment process, and I don't have them on hand, Senator, but a number of... So obviously there was an open competitive selection process. There are a range of applicants and a short list of...
You've just got some numbers.
I don't know off the top of my head, sorry. I can't remember. It was in the order of 10.
10,
yeah.
Okay. And did Cathy McGowan throw her hat in the ring for the position?
I'm not going to go into details of the interview process, Senator.
Okay. Why can't you answer that question?
I want to respect the privacy of the individuals that were involved in the recruitment process.
Okay. So could you explain to me why? I mean, she had a good tenure for 3 years as chair. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, and she seemed to be big accolades, including a statement from Mr. Veitch as well, congratulating her and her time there and achievements. The previous chair was there for 6 years. My understanding is she did apply for the position. So can you explain why she wasn't considered for another term?
What I'm willing to say, Senator, is that the department undertook a process, interviewed a number of applicants that were shortlisted, and it provided a shortlisted number of candidates who are deemed suitable to the Minister for consideration.
Yep, you haven't answered my question. So she wasn't the best candidate, is that your... That's not what I'm saying. Well, if that's not the case, then what is the reason she didn't get another tenure? If she'd applied for it, she'd done a good job.
Senator, what I'm keen to do is to respect the recruitment process and the nature, I guess the privacy of the individuals who are involved in the recruitment process. I'm not willing to add any further to comments I've already made to you.
Question for the Minister. Minister, and perhaps for you too, Mr. Lowe, are you aware of the government's policy on targets for women on boards, particularly the roles of chairs and deputy chairs?
Broadly speaking, yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, broadly speaking, yes.
Okay. And are you aware that the agriculture sector does very poorly in appointing women as chairs and as board members?
Well, Senator, I think I haven't got the statistics in front of me. I don't know what your definition of poor is, but it's a little under 50% is my recollection.
If you could clarify that.
I'm happy to take that on notice. So yes, we'd like
notice.
to do better. I think the goal is 50-50, but that's something we always have in mind when we make appointments.
I've actually got the number here, Senator.
Yep.
The current gender balance for women on portfolio boards is 48.7%, 55 of 113 positions.
And were any active steps taken to encourage women to apply for the position?
We do. We do have active steps. We have a program and work with AgriFutures actually around encouraging women into leadership positions.
Okay. If you could, so the 48.55% across...
48.7.
If you could give that to me, the details of that, I'd appreciate that.
Yep.
The breakdown on it.
The split by body, yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Sorry, no, I don't. Sorry, not of Riddick.
All right.
All them.
Mr. Veitch and Miss Casey, thank you very much. Sorry, it is always a bad rush in this portfolio.
Sorry,
Senator Whitten, you again. Didn't you just have a go?
I had some questions on.
I mean, it's great to see you here, but you're starting to warm out the welcome.
I'm a serial pest.
Senator Whitten.
You might have heard my comments to the APVMA about the safety evaluation of the... Yep. Do you have any thoughts on glyphosate in general?
Beyond my role as chair of Riddick, it would be unwise for me to venture into that space, I would suggest.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay. In relation to the practice of topping crops with glyphosate for harvest, is this something that the GRDC recommends, or are there other methods?
We're not GRDC.
Sorry.
This is
next up.
AgriFutures.
This is AgriFutures.
GRDC.
My apologies.
It's all right, there's no dramas. Well, look, once again, arrivederci. I will just let know, Grains Research and Development Corporation, and then after that, Regional Investment Corporation, Inspector General of Biosecurity. There's not many things in life that are certain. The sun will come up and it'll go down, and I'm out of here at 11 o'clock. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
See you later. Thank you, good luck. Right, GRDC. Yeah. Senators, because the show stops at 11. Let's get through it, and then no one's going to sook up. Righto. Grains and Research. Can I welcome Ms. Starrick and Mr. Hart? Did I get that right? Sorry, it's all blurry, your name tags.
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Would you like to make a brief opening statement?
Just a very brief opening statement. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Senators. My name is Sharon Starrick. I'm the Chair of the Grains Research Development Corporation. I'm also a grain grower from the Murraylands in South Australia, and currently we're very dry and quite hot. Next to me, on my left, is Mr. Nigel Hart. Nigel is our Managing Director.
Great, thank you very much. Now we will go straight to questions.
You probably heard my first question.
Sorry, Senator Whitten, I should say.
Yeah, do you have an opinion on glyphosate?
Do we have an opinion on glyphosate? Obviously, glyphosate is a chemical which is registered through the APVMA process. We respect the role that the APVMA plays in the assessment of those products and setting the standards for how those products are used out in farming systems. From our perspective, I guess it's a registered tool that growers can use. It's a very critical and very important tool, particularly when we consider what we're trying to achieve around our farming systems. Minimum till, no till. Farming systems do require and rely on products like glyphosate to be able to sustain what we believe is a longer term sustainable approach to farming in zero till.
Yep. Sorry, I probably should have been more specific. Did you have an opinion on glyphosate in regards to the study that was pulled recently?
No, Senator, we don't. No, that's not the role of GRDC. That is the role of the APVMA around those processes.
So in relation to the practice of topping crops with glyphosate for harvest, is this something that you would recommend, or are there other methods being being able to use for crop harvest that are preferable?
In terms of any use of chemicals, there are requirements or labour requirements that when those products are used that growers need to comply with. Those standards are set by the APVMA, and we always encourage growers to abide by the label requirements in terms of the use of those products in the production of their crops.
Yeah, I'm talking about topping crops specifically. So, are there other methods that are used by anybody, or do people use timing, or is that just the standard for grain crops these days in Australia?
No, it's only used in certain circumstances, probably more so with some of the indeterminate crops. In certain circumstances with indeterminate crops. But again, I'll just repeat, we encourage growers to comply with label requirements in terms of how they use those products. So it's not for us, to provide advice. The only advice that we provide is please adhere to the label requirements.
Okay. Do you have any numbers on what percentage of the crop mightn't have glyphosate used as a topping?
We would have to take that on notice, Senator. It's not something that I have at hand, but happy to take that question on notice.
Yeah, that's fine. But would you have that information? Is that something that's reported on?
I don't think so, but I obviously need to check with our internal team, and potentially would have to check with the regulator if they had that type of information as well.
Okay. I note on your website that there's a proposed study with Southern Cross University around regenerative agricultural practices. Will this study look at methods to reduce reliance on pesticides or herbicides?
Look, I think that study with the university has now been running for about 18 months. I think the essence of the basis of that program of work is to, obviously the definition of regenerative agriculture is one which has a broad interpretation of the same. Yep. I think what that project is aimed at doing is to work through, I guess, that process of some definition around the terms of regenerative type agricultural practices. At this point in time, that study is still underway, and we will report on the outcomes of that study when that's completed, I think in probably another 12 to 18 months' time.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Kennedy?
Yes, look, I just wanted to ask about your reserves. Where are they standing at the moment?
Thank you for the question, Senator. The reserves, as reported in our annual report for 24-25, were reported as $728.5 million.
Geez, that's how much. So, that's cash, is it?
That's correct.
Yes.
Where do you have that invested? Just in cash, or?
We have that money sitting with a managed investment fund, in a managed investment fund, but we also have some available working capital.
Okay, maybe on those you could tell us what the fund is. Just one fund, is it? Is it managed by an investment bank or a bank?
It's managed by Macquarie, and we're restricted in terms of the investment profile. We can invest in interest-bearing deposits as well as government bonds.
So you're getting close to the future fund with this sort of... It's a fair amount of money to be sitting on. So how much are you spending a year?
In our core R&D program, we'll be spending around about, well, this year, the projected expenditure is between $250 and $270 million.
Right, and how much do you raise in, how much is your income?
Our income will vary by season, and I think this year the forecast range for us is around about
365 million to
390.
390.
Yep.
So you're adding another 130 million to your reserves.
No, our projected, because also we have operating costs, Senator,
okay,
so our projected addition to reserves this year is somewhere between $50 and $70 million.
What's the point of collecting so many levies above and beyond your costs when you're already sitting on over $700 million?
So, Senator, I think it's important to provide a bit of context of how we got to the position that we did in terms of the reserves. So, if we look back to where reserves were sitting in 2020-2021 financial year, we had reserves of $170 million. And at the same time, we had a R&D expenditure of $168.9 million. So reserves have grown over the last few years. That's off the back of some really strong seasons in most areas of Australia, in grain growing areas of Australia. It's also off the back of some really strong pricing for grain crops over that period of time.
So is there a discussion about lowering the levy to return? So, I mean, effectively they're, I suppose, in a way, dividends back to the industry?
So GRDC does not have any discussions around the levy. That is a conversation between industry and the government, and at the end of the day, the minister, in terms of
Is there any light? I know it's late and we've lost the outcomes, but...
Senator, we canvassed this in earlier discussions in committee
I might have
today.
missed it.
Yeah.
Right. So is that being looked at?
So in very short summary, there are two representative organisations. One, GPA, has put a proposal to the minister around the levy rate.
Okay. Sounds like a pretty strong case for it. All right, well, that's it for me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Ms Starrick. Thank you, Mr Hart. Travel safe back to where you come from.
Chair.
We'll now go to Rick for 5 minutes, and then we've got the Inspector General Biosecurity for 5. Please come up. Where was I? Okay. Okay, now I'd like to welcome Regional Investment Corporation, Ms Smith Pomeroy, the Chair, and Mr Howard, the CEO. Welcome. Do you wish to make a brief opening statement?
In the interest of time, given it's nearly 11 p.m, I'm happy to just move to questions.
Thank you very much. This program was etched in concrete about 3 weeks ago, so I apologise. Right. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. Just some quick questions, follow-ups really from earlier today. Where are we at with the marine recovery and drought hardships loans?
The government's working through the process and we're waiting to get final loan rule.
Do you need to have any legislative changes before you issue these loans?
That is a question I might defer to my colleagues.
Presumably you understand your own legislation, but yep, sorry.
So I think they require legislative instruments to be put in place.
But it doesn't have to go through Parliament with a change to the Act or anything like that. Okay, so that's not a hold-up. Are you providing feedback to the government on guidelines or terms and conditions for these loans products?
We've been engaged through that process, yes.
Okay, all right. Once you get the green light from government, how quickly can you put these into the market?
Should be a matter of weeks, Senator.
Okay. Have you got systems in place ready to go?
Yes.
You've done that work. Do you know, or can you tell me whether there'll be a single interest rate across these loan products?
That's the indication that's been forwarded from in the public domain, yes. The same rate that we've got at the moment.
Same
for
rate
all our product,
that,
which is 5.18%.
Yeah, we canvassed that earlier. Okay, that's it for me. Richard, did you want to? You've probably got time.
I was just going to ask about why that sits above some current commercial rates that are in the market. Is there any discussion around what the rate is? I mean, one of the concepts behind the RIC was a concessional process.
As part of the instruments that are in place for us, there's a methodology that's in place and that's provided to us, and we execute against that.
So I suppose it's more a question to the Minister.
I think we canvassed some of this morning as well, Senator Colbeck. So it is offered at a discount rate.
That's right.
Concessional rate.
So, Senator, the rate is a concessional rate at 5.18%. In general, it's around a 2% concession on commercial rates.
For reference, Senator, in FY25, against the cohort that we actually provided loans to, the concessionality was 2.26%.
For those
that was for FY25 for those that received the loan.
Okay, thanks.
Good stuff. All right, on that then, thank you very much, Ms Smith-Pomeroy. Thank you, Mr Howard. Travel safe. And we'll go to our last witness in the last 4 minutes, Dr McEwen from the Inspector General of Biosecurity. Welcome.
Thank you.
Doctor, would you like to make a brief opening statement before we go to about 2 minutes of questions? I'm so sorry.
To go straight to questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, Senator Canavan?
Just follow up from last estimates, you indicated that you'd have a draft program in January. Have you discussed that with, which you could, discuss with stakeholders and the department, etc.? Have you had those discussions?
I have, and it should. I'm just finalising it in this week. Should be published by end of this week, early next week.
Okay, because that was my next question. Can you tell us some of the key themes that are emerging in this work?
So the program, I've developed a rolling 2-year program with 4 reviews I'm considering for the first year. I want to look at probably documentation around import requirements and how that's being used, whether there are any gaps and whether there's perhaps more requirements. I would keen to look at technology and the use of it at the border, both in how it's being used now, but also the potential for new technologies and other approaches to improve both efficiency but also effectiveness. I'm also concerned, one of the things I'm very keen to look at is risk across the entire biosecurity continuum and how it's being managed, whether it's being managed individually or at a system level, because I think it's very important to think about the biosecurity system as a system. And I'm also interested, particularly in the first year, in looking at emergency preparedness, particularly around biosecurity incursions.
Okay. Okay, that's very comprehensive. Thank you for that. Have you considered in more detail any need to reform the Inspector General role?
Not as yet. I think that's one of the things I'll think about as I do the job over the first year.
All right, and look, on notice, could you provide a list of the stakeholders you did consult in developing the program? Okay. Thank you. One from Senator Colbeck.
So there was evidence earlier today about an increase in incursions. Is that informing your thinking as part of the...
Yes, so I mean,
so
in
does
terms
that go
of
into the risk work that you're doing? So I mean, that's a...
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I'm interested in risk is both looking at how we deal with high risk issues and think about them, and whether potentially at times they might be over-serviced, while issues, if they're considered low risk at every stage of processes, may actually have that capacity to sort of slip through the system a little bit. So being able to look at how the idea of risk is balanced by the department in its work is, I think, really important to understand whether it's effective in what it's achieving.
Great. Well, Dr McEwen, thank you so much, and I appreciate you hanging around this time. Look, that does bring to an end today's Senate estimate hearing for this portfolio. On behalf of the committee, can I thank Ms Anderson, thank you very much to you and your officers. Mr Lowe, sterling effort, mate, you've been here all day as well. Please pass on our best to all at the back that have gone home. On that, thank you again, Patrick, to you and your team. Hansard and Broadcasting would be lost without you. Thanks, team. Everyone travel safe. Minister, thank you very much. That concludes today's hearing. Thank you. Thank you.